back to another episode of Collector's Quest. I'm Tyler here with Johnny and Steph. And guys, 200 episodes that Johnny's been on.
200 speed mails. Woo.
Wow, that was really our celebration 200. For being one of the most regular game collecting podcasts of all time.
You know who else is really regular on this podcast? Tyler, tell them about your prune fetish.
I don't understand. Why did I was specifically not recording the before show because I'm like, well, good thing no one has to listen to this. Yeah, I eat prunes. They are relatively nutritious and calorie dense for a snack that does not cost a lot of money.
Okay, so guys,
we were making up this scene, Johnny and I, like this dramatic scene for his biography about how he has to make a hot choice between Cracklin' Oat Bran and prunes, and then in a moment of high drama, he decides to put the prunes on the Cracklin' Oat Bran, and Tyler was away, and then he comes back right when we're talking about that, and he's like, "Oh, I would try that."
Yeah,
obviously. Why not? It's just a big raisin.
If you don't know anything about Tyler, know this. He loves his fiber. Loves it. How much fiber can he get? How regular can he make his pooping?
He's also simultaneously the youngest and oldest of us.
Yeah, so, if you don't know, this is part of the Tyler's old series.
Right.
Yeah, so totally on brand. Prunes, him telling me he was chilling prunes in his fridge was the least shocking thing I will hear today. I was like, and that's what started the premise. I'm like, Tyler, if I was writing a book about you, I would definitely put, and it would be, out of my imagination, but it would be something about the prunes that you contain in your refrigerator, because I would believe and also know that it is true.
And that is the proper way to celebrate episode 200.
Yeah. Yep.
Man. Okay.
Staying regular, just like this podcast. 200 episodes every other weekish. Woo!
Man, remember when I tried to put out, there was a short time where we did them weekly, which thinking back is insane, but also the episode length has gotten a lot longer. But then we tried to do like 3 a month, and even that it's an awkward schedule. It was just the worst.
No, we have a nice groove here. We figured it out. It only took us 106 episodes to figure it out or whatever.
I like my groove where I just get to come by occasionally and for the fun stuff.
Yeah, Stephanie, you want to edit some episodes occasionally and just take the load
I really
off?
Don't. Nope. Sure don't.
Tyler, do you want anyone else to edit an episode?
I really don't. I'm a control freak, so let me edit
There have
everything.
been several times when we tried reasonably a lot to get you to let someone else. We're gonna pay people several times.
We were gonna use the Patreon money to pay for an editor, but a lot of the things I edit out are like, oh, we said something or something clearly super duper wrong about video games, and there's no way like a Fiverr editor is going to know like what facts we got wrong. And I like going back and listening to that stuff. You need the experts, and we are self-acclaimed experts because we said.
I don't know that we are.
I mean, I'll say it, we are ish.
We're dudes on a podcast, that's for sure.
I think, you know what? I think I know enough to know how much I don't know, and that's like the hallmark of an expert. I can say I feel like I know nothing, so that makes me like pretty good. I'm not gonna say definitive statements about things because I know there's too much information.
It's everyone who's ever been overconfident, like the guy you find on YouTube who is like, thumping his own chest. That guy is always the wrongest guy on the internet.
Yeah. Every time I thought I figured it out, I thought I was doing pretty good at Xbox, and then I just threw up my hands, and I'm like, everything's a noble. We can't do anything. Video games are a nightmare.
It's like they weren't created in an orderly structure for other people to collect.
I think now they are intentionally made disorderly. They're like, here's the limited run release, and the Play Asia release, and the Best Buy release, and the Day 1 edition, and they're just trying to make it as confusing as possible, so everyone feels like they get the edition they want.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter. That's all just marketing. They're just like, how do we sell more games, and how do we try and convince people to buy early? And everyone's like, oh yeah, I got that Day 1 release, but that one probably has the most prints, so the rarest one is probably not the Day 1 release.
Nope, going back to collecting for Xbox. Yeah, the day one stuff is not the hard stuff to find. It's the random fucking platinum edition shit.
Oh yeah, but I mean, what is it? The Xbox One launch games are all day one editions with shiny foil
They sure
covers. Got to go get those. That's a cool set. I mean, that is a cool set, but man, do I not care about the Xbox One, so I'm not going to get that set. All right, I'd like to give a shout out to the RF Generation Collector Cast, which has been continuously running for over 10 years and still, as far as I know, is the only podcast that's dedicated to game collecting, running longer than Collector's Quest without a break. So that's super cool. And then there's some we lost along the way. The North American Retro Collective, Johnny, that was one I listened to a lot. They became Dollar Dorks, which also fell off. And I know some of the people who made this podcast are listening to the show. Any other game collecting podcast you want to shout out, Johnny?
That don't exist anymore?
Yeah, the ones we lost along the way.
Nah, I don't have any others. You took the one I would have said, which was Narc.
There's there's a newer one. There was The Hunt, which was like dedicated to sealed and graded stuff, but that hasn't had an episode in like almost a year.
Yeah, there was Dan's podcast.
Yep. There's the Unlockable podcast by Bird Dog Gaming. Listens to Collector's Quest. He's a Patreon. That one's still going.
That one's still going, and
that's only like a year old, I think, though. But you know, if you get past 10 episodes in a podcast, most people like fall off pretty quick on the podcast train. So
yeah, well, and like The Hunt, like that. Dan was going hard for.
That dude
like,
was making like an
minute.
episode every 2 days.
He was like, yeah, he was doing an episode every few days, and then he's like, nope, no, I'm done.
It's like my brain is out of ideas. I put them all out.
It's right, but also to his credit, he did like try to tie it up at the end too. He didn't just stop making them. He was like, nope, this is my last episode.
Hey, you guys want a fun fact? And I'm not sure if this is true, but we'll have to double check. But fun fact, I think I killed Narc. I think I was their last guest. And I think I was the last guest on Dan's podcast too. So I murdered them dead.
So I think like Narc came back after like a year or two and had like a special episode. And it's like, we're going to maybe come back and do irregular episodes. And then you were on it. And then they're like, yeah, we're not going to do this.
The Grim Reaper of podcasts, Johnny H.
Who's that person? God, it's a lady, and is it the girl from? It's not the girl from Weeds. God, she like the minute she shows up on a podcast, the podcast ends, or not a podcast, like a TV sitcom. That's a sign that it's over. There's like a girl that's like that, and a guy, and I forget. Whenever they get cast on a show, that means the show is over.
It's like the Madden curse.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's just a sign that means the show is over. When they try to bring in these other people. Anyways, well, it'll come to me later. But yeah, I'm that person for video game podcasts. So there's some people who want me on their podcast right now, and maybe they should reconsider.
Hey, I mean, you've been on your own podcast.
This is your stealth way of getting out of having to guest on other people's podcasts. I mean, you're like, look, guys, I'm happy to, but have you seen my
track record?
Yeah,
I'm 100% for murdering a podcast that isn't my own.
Johnny, we were speaking about this the other day, but I subscribe to all these stupid collectibles and speculation podcasts about things like Pokemon cards and Fortnite cards and sports cards and things. To be clear, I don't collect any of these. I just find like the people who get really serious about finance in like little pieces of cardboard, like their minds are just really interesting to me. And I'm saying, like, look at my stuff that I collect. Like I'm collecting plastic, cardboard, and silicon. It's not like I have any real hill to stand on here. Like 90% of them stopped after mid 2021 last year, and I only like kind of just realized it because one of the main ones I listened to, which was the Geeked Out Collecting podcast, they just had their last episode. They the girl who runs it said like, hey, this is the last episode. And then I went back and looked at all the other ones I don't listen to as much, and all of them ended in 2021 because that's when the free money stopped rolling in. So all of a sudden it wasn't fun to talk about like Pokemon cards anymore. And I just thought that was
your
really
hobby's not 10xing every day,
right?
Then you don't want to talk about it.
It's like, oh, this isn't my hobby anymore because I can't use it to pay my bills. So I need a new hobby.
Yeah.
Cool. It is a shame that so many of them just died right there. But also, we probably didn't need those. That's nature's way of keeping only the right amount of podcasts.
Natural podcast selection.
Yeah.
When Johnny is not nature's arbiter.
Yeah. When I'm the Grim Reaper of podcasts who comes to your show. I kind of like that as a title, the Grim Reaper of podcasts. That's very funny to me.
But you have a long-running podcast. It
I
doesn't
know,
make any sense.
No, like that's the funny part. Like,
Hey, he
I can
looks out
only
for his own. Yeah.
I can only exist here. If I go out, like I find a way to murder your show I steal your power and then strengthen our show. That's what I do.
This is the holodeck of your podcasts.
Yeah.
You can only exist within this podcast.
Yeah, I like the idea that I go out and I drain them of their podcast energy to put back into our show.
And that's why we're at episode 200.
That's right. That's how we got here.
You've been sucking the life force of all these other podcasts.
So someone get me on your podcast soon because we're at episode 200 and we need a refill.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we want to get into episode 200? Johnny, the big one, the one people have been waiting for. So you want to collect NES Part 2.
No.
So you want to collect GameCube. I think the one people are actually waiting for. Probably so you want to collect GBA because, oh my God, do we have a lot of people who are into GBA who listen to this podcast.
Yeah, we're doing it right.
That's not even on our list, I don't think. So you want to collect
It
GBA?
is. It 100% is.
Okay, but I mean, it's not something I've been thinking about like, oh, in the future, we're going to be doing this soon because I think we're going to do GameCube first.
It's not in the episode idea doc, but it is in the So You Want to Collect doc that I have, independent of that.
Okay. There's a forum thread on Video Game Stage right now on like what you think the hardest set to collect would be. And I think...
It better not be GameCube.
No. I think 2600 kind of wins. It was like, what's the most intimidating set to collect? And 2600 wins because no one tries to go for a full set because there are games that only have one copy. So everyone just literally gives up before they start. They're like, oh, there's only one copy. Well, I can't do it.
Sure.
You could do it. If you threw that guy $500,000, he would sell you the game. So what? Are you just a bitch?
Video game collecting's not hard. It's just expensive.
But then the default next answer is Neo Geo AES. And like, what does the Neo Geo AES have? 13 games, and they come in like hard plastic cases. And oh, boo-hoo, the average price of a game is $1,000. But there's not that many of them. Like the one that I would immediately go to is GBA because you're getting 1,000 cardboard box games, and half of them were exclusively owned by children. So man, I think GBA collectors are crazy.
Yeah, thrown out by GameStop. There's systems that are super, like, modern that. Then Game Gear is also really hard for a complete box. Original Game Boy, also very hard. Game Boy Color. Like, all the portable systems are hard by the nature of what they were. DS and 3DS are kind of uniquely hard in the same, they have kind of the same thing going that GBA did, is a lot of those doubles that became the GameStop era of games. And at some point in the life cycle of GameStop during GBA, they said, we're not keeping boxes anymore. We're only going to keep this cart. And all the boxes went away. So, yeah. I mean, there's also a lot of weird production run stuff going on with all these systems where, like, does it count? Is it real? Isn't it real? Yeah, GBA is hard. But there's a lot of people, and it's also the size of the library too. That's the other thing it has going for it.
Yeah, I think
like
the
Game Boy
size is what
hard,
makes it intimidating. People don't want to collect complete in box cardboard box sets of 1,000 games.
No, that's more than Super Nintendo or Nintendo. So gross.
And you know what? I'm not dissing GBA. I genuinely think it's one of the best platforms that's ever been made. But I think there is a certain like prestige and drive that drives like crazy people to collect complete in box NES and Super Nintendo sets. And you have to be a little bit crazier to spend all that effort and money on GBA, knowing that it's not going to be like the set that makes you like on top of Collecting Mountain by having like a complete in box NES set. It's like, you have a full GBA set. You're out of your mind.
Also, that set has a glut of shovelware too. So there's that. And
I feel like, so I'm not super familiar with GBA, but I know, like, I'm definitely familiar with Game Boy, and I know all the rare games, and everyone knows all the rare games. So they're kind of picked out and priced accordingly, but I'm just going to guess that out of whatever 900 US GBA games there are, that there are a bunch of rare games that just no one cares about, so they don't show up. So even though you would have the money to buy them, it's just like, well, I can't buy this stupid Super Volleyball game or whatever that game is. Ultimate Beach Volleyball, is that it?
I feel like GBA was really at the, like, when entertainment at large, like, all got together and decided that like video games was just a like regular piece of their marketing push for whatever thing that they were doing. That like GBA was there when that was on the ground floor. So like it really like because I mean I was at Disney during the GBA cycle, right? And we did a lot of shovelware on the GBA because it was really easy and cheap to do. So yeah, there's just like a lot of stuff that no one cares about.
And it's really interesting because all those games came out and it was like, here it is, it's for GameCube, PS2, and Xbox. And then all of those games had a GBA version. And the GBA version's exclusive because it's always different. So,
well, not if you're Guinness Book of World Record because it has the same name, so clearly it's the same game.
What are you? Is that how they count video games?
They did, yeah, and I don't know if they wound up refining that, but they're like, yeah, if it's got the same title, it doesn't count. And you're just like, you don't understand. Same title doesn't mean same.
So
game.
what they looked at like Temple of Doom on NES, and they're like, this is one video game.
Yep.
I mean, what are they going to do? They're Guinness. They're not going to get into the nuance of all this bullshit. They don't. I mean, they don't care about
they don't
being
actually
right.
care.
They need to sell some books.
It's true.
All right, well, there's
if they
my
have to
GBA
change-
tangent. Anyway, what are we talking about?
And
John?
there's my Guinness tangent. Yeah. What?
So
Now
going back
that
to
all
Prunes.
these people who are hyped about possibly talking about GBA or GameCube,
GBA
stop it.
Prunes.
Yeah, stop. We're not doing that. That's not what we're doing. Apologies. We'll get to that somewhere north of the episode 200. But what we are doing is we're going to look back at goals as this show has changed, since its inception, from me and Kat doing like 25 to 35 minute episodes where it was basically just like a list of like, hey, here's some cool stuff I thought about telling you guys about that you could go and collect, to, in-depth whatever it is that Tower and Stefan and I do now. We're like, let's do a bunch of research on shit no one cares about, to So You Want to Collects. We've changed. The podcast has changed. It's evolved over 200 episodes. And one of our favorite topics is goals. So we thought it would be interesting to go back and like kind of reflect a little bit since we hit episode 200, what our goals were when we came in and started, and then what they've evolved to now. Because all of us are in, I would say, pretty much different places from where we started. At least when we entered this podcast, for sure. So that's what we're doing today. We're talking about goals and how they've changed and why they've changed, and what the plan is going forward.
And what we would have done differently, even though when you look back on situations like this, it's like, yeah, but if I told myself that 10 years ago, I wouldn't have listened to myself. So I couldn't have done anything different.
What would I have done differently? I would have spent even more money.
I mean, that too, right? Like, what was I doing? I bought a car in like 2012. Dude, you could have went and bought Nintendo games with that money. Kept driving the Mercury Mystique.
And does that make sense? Like, I would have spent more money. And then if we fast forward to 10 years where everything is dead and no games are no longer cared about because the economy has crashed and, I don't know, we're a ruined nation at that point or something, and games have no value. We're like, I would have spent less money on games. So who knows? Everything is of the time. So you only know what you know in the time, but let's try to pinpoint something and be wrong as usual.
Yay!
All right, Johnny, how do we want to do this? How do we want to structure this? So I could probably set up my periods in game collecting into like 3 or 4 eras. Do we want to go like each of us in turn go over like how we started out early and then like middle and end, or do we want to do one person at a time?
No, you go. Yeah, let's keep it one person at a time. You'll break in, and then we can kind of talk about what you did. Like, Steph and I can have questions for you, and then we'll rotate through.
All right, that sounds good. Who's starting, Johnny?
You are.
I'm starting. Wow. Okay.
Yay!
Nintendo, as I've said many times on the show, Nintendo is the one who put me on this horrible path of ruining my life.
No, it isn't.
By becoming a game collector.
Game Gear is the one who put you on this horrible
path.
Well,
that defined my taste.
Johnny is here to correct your own history.
God damn it. So I started collecting not when the Wii came out, when the Virtual Console was announced, and it was $5 per NES game. This was like 2005, maybe early 2006, but it was $5 per NES game. Absolute ripoff. Like, NES games were still at GameStop, I think. Like, there was the tail end of it, and they were all like $1. And like flea markets and everything. No one was paying more than $2 for a real NES game. I mean, people obviously were, but so I felt like the more NES games I could acquire, the more I could stick it to the man. So really, my whole impetus, my whole goal was to just acquire as many NES games as possible. And this was an era before I was like even good at games or really put effort into playing games. So if I played one of these games and like I couldn't beat like the second level the first time, I would just shut it off and be like, oh, this game sucks. I'm going to go back to playing Rescue Rangers. And like my mindset has completely flipped on that now. Like now I want a game where I could sit down and I have to memorize things and get good at it. But basically, if I couldn't beat a game the first time I sat down and played it when I first started collecting NES, I didn't want to beat it.
That's pretty weird.
And then
the challenge didn't drive you?
What's up?
So weird. The challenge didn't drive you. I find that
no,
weird.
not at all. It was the opposite. Because I was just trying to beat as many games as possible, and the easiest way to do that was to beat easy games, Johnny.
But see, like, that's so counterintuitive to me because, like, yeah, you beat games, like, and to do that, there should be some challenge there, right? So you're like, I have to get good. Like, and you're just like, nah, it's hard. Like, you didn't want to acquire any of the skill. You just like, let's just check a box.
I mean,
oh, wait, that's video game collecting.
I grew up on like NES and Genesis as a young kid, but then I had more experience with games like N64 and GameCube, and I guess those weren't the era where like games completely take you on the rails, but it was really hard to get stuck to the point where you're just like, oh, I can't beat this game once we get into like the late 90s and 2000s. And I'd say that's pretty common if you're really not going to put in effort into like an NES game. There are plenty of games where it's like, oh, I can't beat this game. I feel that way with Mike Tyson's Punch-Out now. And yes, it's still on my list. I'm going to play it this year. I'm going to try to beat it this year. But the reason I haven't beat it is because I hit the difficulty wall. And it's like, shit, I can't beat this game. And that just didn't happen with the more contemporary games I was playing at the time. So I just basically gave up immediately. The first sign of resistance, like literally the first game over, I just take a game out and never play it again. I was the biggest wimp.
I mean, especially on NES because there's so many game overs to be offered.
I know. So I would literally, like, even like DuckTales, I didn't beat DuckTales when I was a teenager because DuckTales is an easy game, but it's not like I'm going to put this in and beat it for the first time, like a Wacky Races or something game. Sorry if you can't beat Wacky Races the first time you put it in, but that's my example.
Minus 5 subscribers.
Yeah. So after getting into NES, I mean, it was basically just loose NES cartridges. I found like GameTZ.com, DigitPress.com. What's another? Like Nintendo Age didn't exist yet. I wasn't really on Assembler at this point, but I got into the collecting scenes, and what was really popular was referring to games by rarity, especially like the Nintendo. Well, when Nintendo Age became a thing, or the DigitPress rarity guide, and like once you got to like an R7, so it was a 1 to 10 scale, 1 being balls common, 10 being like stadium events. And like once you got to an R7, that's a pretty uncommon game. Like, I don't know, Gargoyles Quest 2 might be like an R7 type game, or Cowboy Kid might be like an R7, R8 type game. And so I was loading up on my $1 and $2 games. I worked at Burger King making like $7 an hour. So I mean, you know, $7 an hour if you're working part-time, you could pick up plenty of games when you go to the flea market. But then my goal was to get as many uncommon games as cheap as possible, and also 100% quantity over quality. Because the smart thing to do, if I was going back, if I really wanted to maximize my dollars, it would be to save up for like the R9, R10, like the super good pieces, which were probably like $200 to $300 or something for the stuff I was going after. But I would look for like Cowboy Kid I got for $5. That's one I vividly remember buying specifically because it had a high rarity value and cost no money. After, in this era, I got into video game resale. So my average weekend was going out to the garage sales, going out to the flea markets, buying every NES that I found because I could easily flip an NES for $45. That was free money. And then I dig through the bins of NES games looking for rare games. And I specifically remember, so if you look at a bin of NES games, you could tell just by looking at the end labels what's a 3-screw and what's a 5-screw. But when I was like 15 years old, I didn't realize that. So I would pick up every game that I knew had a cool screw variant and look at the screws on the back because I didn't realize that the tops looked different. So I'm just an idiot at this point.
You're also a weirdo who cared about screws.
Yeah.
Uh,
Nobody cared that.
oh man,
I mean,
you gotta.
also, to interject, sorry, but like, can we all just take a moment to appreciate there was a time in this world where Tyler was all about selling video games,
I know.
selling things.
100%. I funded the
That's
whole
a-
hobby by going to
It's a Tyler
to flea
that
markets.
we've never known, Johnny. It's a
I know.
Tyler we've never
It was
known.
NES. Dude, Super Mario Duck Hunt was gold because I knew if I got a Super Mario Duck Hunt, I could charge $10 more for an NES bundle. And it would be so much easier to sell because, like, throwing in like an extra controller, throwing in a zapper cost nothing. Like, a zapper was that like $3? So I'd just get zappers, I would get 2 controllers, and you put a copy of Mario Duck Hunt, you could put that shit up for like $60 and someone would buy it. And this was also at the time where I would put in like the shitty Chinese new 72 pins in these consoles, and I would call them refurbished, not realizing yet that like I'm actually making the console worse by putting in this super low quality connector. But hey, I got that money,
did
money.
You
a
son of a
disservice.
bitch.
People wanted them. People didn't want an NES unless it was quote unquote refurbished back then.
Yeah, because they didn't want to see that blink.
Right?
I
Yeah,
put
that
it in,
blink
it
was
didn't work.
the devil.
Yeah, and if you sold something that blinked, then you were going to get a message saying, this doesn't work. And you're like, you got to blow in the game and push it down just slightly on the edge. Don't jam it down too hard and it'll work.
I got eBay, so I would sell NES games, and I got eBay returns for games that I knew worked, and I would get them back in the mail, and they would work. I thought I was getting scammed, and then I would get it back in the mail, and it's like, oh, this guy must have just had a shitty NES, and like I probably could have cleaned the games better or something, but still, like, there were stupid buyers out there who didn't know, like, NES is a shitty system that you kind of have to tinker with to make it work sometimes.
I'm sure that is still happening to people today, honey.
That
has
I'm
not
sure.
changed.
Every
No,
day.
Johnny, no one plays their games. Come on, what are you talking about?
That's
I'm sure it
true.
happens even more with like those clone consoles because that's a crapshoot. You don't know if it's because the hardware is genuinely crap or if like your game is dirty or if like whatever. It's just all a crapshoot.
Yeah, and I was at this time I was definitely looking for games like Contra, Tyson's Punch-Out, and Super Tecmo Bowl, or Tecmo Super Bowl, because I could go out literally every Saturday and I would find one of those, Johnny, and those were worth fucking $20 cart only. Also, this time $20 for a cartridge. It was like free money. It was like finding gold because they would cost
And I
me
mean,
like
shipping
$3.
and shipping was like $2 and stamps.
Oh, less.
were-
It was like $1.51 for a bubble mailer back
Yeah.
then.
Tyler,
Yeah.
did you mention what year this would be?
It was like 2006
ish?
maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I told you like I was looking for like screw variants and uncommon games. Like this entire time where I was going out literally every weekend, I never found anything good. All my best deals ever in my life were from eBay or buying stuff on forums. So that tells you, like, even when it was literally like my part-time job to resell video games during an era where you could find good deals on stuff, I never found anything good, and I was going out every single weekend. So good
Sounds
luck if
about
you
right.
still do that today. You might hit the jackpot. I don't know.
I don't know. People still find things. I don't
Deals are
understand how
still
it
out
happened.
there.
And then, so shortly after this, I went to college and I got really into playing every video game. And I don't mean like every major release. I mean, like, there were a few enough video games that I thought, like, what if I just play every important video game that's ever come out and like rank them all? I had a list of I made a list of every game I played and I ranked them all from best to worst. So I'd play a game and I'd be like, oh, is this better than Tetris but worse than Metal Gear Solid 2? I don't know. It was a crazy and stupid time in my life, but
I'm so glad you were like that because I was the same.
it
I
was
like
really weird.
just like writing down paper lists and just being like, let's see, where would I rank this thing? Because I'm a fucking maniac.
Yeah, like-
Where were my lists going? Like I did this with TV shows and movies too. I'm like, who is this for? Why am I doing this, insane person?
Like completely incomparable games like Pong. Like I've played like actual Pong arcade cabinets, so Pong was somewhere on that list. And then above Pong would be like Iden Chronicles on N64. It's like, how did I decide that this is the order? This makes no sense.
Like, no, this seems right. I think I've nailed it here. We can move on.
So I had, I think I was big into rfgeneration.com. That was what I was using to track my games at this point. And they broke your collection down into sets based on console, like almost everybody does. And then they would show you the percentage of each set you have. And I don't know, there were like a dozen consoles that actually mattered at this point. And so I wanted everything. I'm like, what if I just got every video game? And GameStop was selling older disc games for like $3 to $5. Like good stuff like Metroid Prime, Metal Gear Solid 2, like Knights of the Old Republic. You can get this stuff for nothing because after a game was a couple years old, people didn't want it anymore. And now it's like The Last of Us is just coming out again for $60. And I don't want to get off on a tangent on that, but people
$70.
did not care about older games in this era. So I was loading up on everything. It was my life was a disaster. It was games of all different levels of completeness because I didn't care about like conditions super a lot. I would have just loose NES games and broke games with Saturn games with broken cases and GameCube games with GameStop stickers on them. I did not care because it made that number of how many video games I own go up. It was like, oh, I broke 1,000 video games. It's all just like this busted stuff from GameStop. And
you were a Reddit collector.
Oh my god, it was my collection sucked. But I thought it was the coolest guy. I think I had like 1,500 games at this point, and I thought I was the coolest fucking guy. I was like, holy shit, I have 1,500 video games. And I had Hurricanes on Super Nintendo. That was a cool one, but like I didn't have anything good. It was just like garbage. I did that for a long time. And then in like 2012 or so, I took a break from game collecting because I was getting into competitive pinball and arcade games and dance games at this point. And I wasn't smart about collecting these either. So my goals here sucked because I wasn't like, what are my favorite pinball machines and what are my favorite arcade games? Which is exactly what I would do now. And I would be like, all right, if we're going to get arcade games in my 600 square foot apartment, we're going to have to be very choosy about what we want. So what are we going to get? We're going to get Outrun 2, which is maybe my favorite arcade game of all time. And we're going to get like maybe a dance machine, like a Pump It Up. And then like, I don't know, a Twilight Zone.
400 square feet. Yeah, that's
what's up?
500 square.
I mean, I already had resigned myself that like I was going to be living in arcade games because my apartment was so small. But that's not what I did. I got the first Pump It Up machine that came up for sale, which was the one at the local arcade, which was like almost the oldest one ever made, and it didn't even have a screen. It had a TV sitting on top of the cabinet because the CRT broke at some point. It was a total piece of shit, and I overpaid for it. And like the manager of the arcade could not believe that I was paying as much as I did. It was like $1,500 for this piece of shit. And like I went to the arcade auction and they had games that I knew for sale, like Silent Scope and Area 51. And going into arcade collecting now, like Silent Scope is literally a game that I bought, I played once, and I never played it ever again. And that game is fucking huge. It's so big, and I have no room in my apartment. I have this Silent Scope machine that I've played once because Silent Scope isn't a replayable game. And I did not consider what would be a fun arcade game to actually own. And, I wonder if people buying these arcade 1-up machines do the same thing. Because I see a game like The Simpsons or Turtles in Time, and my best memories of playing something like The Simpsons, I was at the arcade in the 90s at like a friend's birthday party. We would quarter feed our way through to the end. We didn't care how good we were. And then I would forget about that game for like 3 years until we did the same thing again. Because I'd never like go back and play the Simpsons over again because like, oh, I already did that. And I didn't care about getting good because I didn't care about beat 'em ups. Yeah, I guess my big mistake with arcade and pinball machines is I was definitely buying whatever was available at the arcade auction rather than really taking my money, taking my space into consideration and buying what I actually wanted. Because especially with arcade games that take up a ton of room and are big and heavy and hard to move around and sometimes can be hard to resell if it's not the really desirable stuff, I would definitely rather have one game I actually wanted than 5 games that were available.
Your collection sounds like the grossest.
Yeah, my collection sucked for a long time. It basically only got good in the past like 8 years. I didn't have any sets or anything at this point because I mean sets were still expensive and everything. Like I was working minimum wage, so I didn't have money to get a full set of anything. I was out of the scene for maybe 4 years, and then 2016 I remember I came back, and so 2012
where was this collection during the time when you stepped away?
I had like the shelf. It was like a shelf in my bedroom that just had like all these freaking video games. And then I think also at my parents' house, I might have just like kept a bunch of it there because I'm like, what am I gonna do with all these fucking video games? And now I have like, 5 times more than I did back then. So 2016, I came back. 2012 to 2016 was like the worst. It was like the apocalypse of video games because it's the first time that prices really started rising a lot. And so I came in and I went straight into the FOMO because I was panicking because it's like, I'm so used to Super Mario Brothers 3 being a $6 game, and it never changed the entire time I collected. It was just like, yeah, Mario 3, it's a $6 cartridge. It's stable, just like Little Samson was the thing we used for stability for a long time. And then all of a sudden, everything is double and triple what it used to be in 2016. So I just immediately got into the mindset of, oh my God, prices are going up, and they're going to go up forever, and they're never going to come back down. So I panicked. And I completed all the sets that I had like started and just been like, oh, I could just like pick away at these a little bit and maybe I'll finish it one day. I'm like, oh my God, I got to finish these now or I'm never going to do it again. So like loose NES, N64, and complete Genesis over the next couple years are what I really focused on. And I mean, that's basically what I was doing is just buying games, checking them off lists, and constantly reorganizing my database and figuring out what to do. And I remember I was definitely into card-only games, and Eric, Excitebike Games, who probably doesn't listen to the show anymore, I know he would give me shit, saying like, Tyler, why are you buying cartridges? Cartridges are dumb. Full sets are dumb. You should be buying complete games. And I didn't listen to him because fuck you, Eric. I want all the video games. I mean, I was definitely, even in like 2016, definitely quantity over quality when I was buying games because I felt like I needed to complete my sets. And there's no fucking way, even now, with like 2016 prices, I still wouldn't go back to complete an NES set because it's just too much money. It's just too fucking much. And then 2019 is the first time I actually thought about my goals and maybe, and I'm only saying this now because they're essentially my same goals. So it's like, oh, Tyler got it right this time because we're in the modern era. And it was still more panicking and FOMO, but everyone was going after, like people going hard after sealed NES, like 10xing, 100xing what games used to be. And but they were very focused on NES. So my mindset was, oh shit, they're going to focus on the games I want on N64 and GameCube eventually. And what if I care about sealed games at once? So I spent a year buying all the sealed video games and all the historically important video games that were important to me. So Doom, and I got a sealed Ocarina of Time. And I loaded up on just bullshit sealed GameCube and Wii and just modern games that cost like $40 each, just in case I ever care about them. I didn't really have a goal in when this was going to stop. My goal was just like, think about what the crazy people are going to try to make $1,000 next and get that before they do, so I can win. And, a lot of that was me going after, like, first games in series or games that were, like, important to a genre. But then, like, quickly, because it was 2019, 2020, like, the prices caught up with me. And all of a sudden, like, oh, I don't want to... Even when it gets to, like, $200 for, like, some stupid sealed video game, I'm like, I'm not going to spend $200 on a video game. And that's when then we're at Tyler Now, where I'm going after like history of genres and a lot of computer games and Japanese games. So my goal is basically I want all the building blocks of all the genres I care about. So, the one I've been going after a lot is computer RPGs. And so you can look at certain games and say like, oh, blah, 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 Temple of Apshai is the first computer RPG, or, Beneath Apple Manor is the first computer RPG, or there's all these games you could call the first, but I don't want to make any distinction. I'm just saying like, okay, I'm collecting computer RPGs. I want all the building blocks of what made a computer RPG. I want all the building blocks of what made a Japanese RPG. I want all the building blocks of what made a platform game. And you guys, I've been talking about this for years, so you guys kind of know where I'm at now, right?
Yeah. I think it's weird. You're like, and then I only really established goals in 2019, 2 years after being on this podcast, harping on people to make goals.
Well, I had goals. My goals were completing sets. When I started getting on the podcast, it was checking the Ooze off my Sega Genesis list and being like, guys, it was hard for me to find a nice copy of the Ooze. I think the Ooze might be the next big thing.
Hold on. Price check on the Ooze. Let's see. Going to eBay.
All right.
Whenever you invoke the ooze, we have to check.
I've invoked it. I'm going to guess $37 complete in box. Whoa, look at these prices. There's
You
even a
looking
bunch
at
of them
sold?
available, and it's like an $80 game.
Yep. The first collector's quest spec pick, the ooze. Now going for like between $70 and $100. Holy shit.
Yeah,
Which is
the nice
pretty
one.
good. I mean, if you're just talking about ROI from when we first started hyping it, like that's a pretty decent spec pick.
Yeah, we
I
did
mean,
it.
we could have picked literally anything, and it would have doubled in price from when we started talking about the ooze.
No, because we've checked the ooze before, and it was not like we're like, oh, it's still $35. So we finally did it. The ooze finally made it, guys. Woo.
Yeah, I mean, there's some pretty nice ones, like really complete and sold listings, and it's like 70, 80. I can't believe how many copies of the ooze there are. Considering this is a game, I was like, man, they're really not out there. Like, this game is really available for a game that I thought wasn't out there.
Well, yeah. Now there's people for the nice ones trying to ask for like over $100 now. That's crazy.
How? I mean, all right, I guess people got to complete their sets, but like, when you get to, let's go back to GBA. When you get to GBA, how many people are like genuinely on the path to completing a complete in box GBA set? Because there are so many games you could be like, I'm one of the only 2 on eBay, so my game, you got to pay $400 for it. But when there's 60 different games in the library that are on that kind of level of rarity, yet no one cares about it, like, who's buying all those games for $400?
Everybody in the Collector's Quest Discord.
Oh man,
Yeah.
Are you guys? Oh.
No, there is a dedicated group of GBA guys on the Discord, and yeah, they're they should band together and form a tight group and like refuse to pay high prices and make those prices come down. But nah.
I just want to talk about, like, I'm going through the GBA room in the Discord. The last thing people were talking about was Turbo Turtle. They were validating what the seal looked like on a legitimate one because it's a Majesco game and they have shitty
Turbo
manufacturing.
Turtle is hard to find. I
Yeah,
still
you
don't
got to
know
make sure
Turbo
your
Turtle.
sealed Turbo Turtle is legit. And then Coffee with Mr. Saturn posted a buy it now for a GBA Dragon Tales Dragon Adventures for only
one.
$100. And he said, if you want this, it's going to be hard to find it cheaper.
And that is factual. Man,
Can we forget this episode? Can we just talk about GBA and like?
I'm sure
Guys.
people would love. They would love it if we did, and we have to do a GBA episode. But we do not have the prep done for that. And Stefan definitely does not want to talk about GBA.
I really don't. Yeah, no,
All right.
super don't.
Sorry. I mean, he's probably a little interested in Turbo Turtle, but
When you say Turbo Turtle, the only thing that invokes is the turtle program for the Apple IIe that taught me how to type. Or what is Logos? Was that the name of it? Johnny, help me out here.
I don't know.
It was like a little turtle cursor, and you could like give it coordinates, and it would like draw stuff. And it was like in every computer lab in like 1988. I know half the people who are listening to the show are nodding their head right now.
Yeah,
so
probably they are, but for me, here's how my typing went. It's like 1989. I'm taking like my first typing class. It's like 8th grade or something. It might have been 1990. I don't remember. But we were supposed to get computers, and I was really excited because I waited a semester because the computers were going to be there. My middle school did not get computers until 1992, so I was still on. It wasn't like I was on an electric typewriter like an IBM or anything. I was on an old school, like, I don't know, watching a journalist in 1955 type, big metal, like bust your fingers typewriters. That's what I was using. Not even an automatic return carriage. You had to like grab the bar and manually slap it. It was ridiculous. And I was like, God, I hate this. Who's doing this? And then like I saw my friends, they had like computers or like an IBM, and you're just like, what the hell am I using? And how badly are schools funded, even in nice areas, that we're using typewriters from the 50s?
Yep.
And then I didn't go to a school that had the internet until my senior year. So that's how computers came to me in a upper middle class white neighborhood. Think about that. It's weird.
That is weird.
Technophobes. Teachers are technophobes. Schools are technologically phobic. They're awful.
Anyway, that's what I think about when I think about Turbo Turtle.
Okay. Looking back at how I collected over how long have I been collecting? What is it? 15 years? I would like 10 years. If you just look at my goals, it was pretty much quantity over quality, and I pretty much fucked up for 10 straight years. Because I felt like there were so many games that I had to own, but like, you look at NES, and it's like, well, I gotta own Contra and Zelda and Vice Project Doom, and it never ends. If you try to get every 7 out of 10 game or better, like there's an unlimited supply of games that you could get for not a lot of money. But because I did that for 10 years, I didn't get like a single major game that I thought that was like a super collectible, super cool game to own in that entire period of collecting. Because if there was a $100 game that would have been like the best game to have in my collection, I would rather have $25 games. And I know that not $25 games, $25 games. And man, when you don't have like a ton of games, it is so easy to want the cheaper games because the cheaper games are good. And we talk about it all the time. Go get a copy of God of War 2 on PlayStation 2 while it's still probably a $12 game. But because I didn't have like my long-term goals, like what are the games that I would want the most in like my entire life? If money was no object, what are the games I would want most? I didn't save up for anything because it was all about getting the most quantity. And yeah, and even when I like had more direction, when I was really focusing on completing sets when I came back around 2016, because it was based on sets, like I wasn't getting like the coolest shit that I thought was out there. I was like, well, I need the ooze and I need the Bible games on Genesis, which are kind of expensive, even though I don't really want them. Oh, also around that time, I wanted, because I was like putting a limit on myself at 2,000 to just kind of keep myself sane. I wanted a set that represented the games of the 2000s because, specifically because like I grew up in that era. I was a teenager in that era. I played a lot of those games, and it was the time I was most interested in like following games journalism. And my biggest fuck up was I picked Xbox over PS2, and PS2 would have been a lot harder, but Xbox has no exclusives. And part of my reasoning was like, well, Xbox has the better multi-platform games, so I'll have the best version of Prince of Persia: Warrior Within. But all those games are on PC too, so it's not even the best version. I'm sorry. Basically, I'm apologizing to all caps for collecting Xbox instead of PS2. Like, I thought I was going to be the Xbox variant guy. This is when I met, like, Dan Gomez on Instagram because he was one of the only people, like, really going deep into, like, stupid Xbox minutia. And then now he became, like, the ultimate sealed modern, knows everything about modern game guys. And I'm over here buying Japanese PC games. We both moved on from Xbox.
Well, thank you for your service on the Xbox.
No problem, Johnny.
Xbox is a delightful system that a couple of these hosts on the show are familiar with. Stefan, you love Xbox so much that you completed it and got rid of it immediately.
Yes, that is exactly how I decide which sets I'm going to collect. It's 100% about how much I love it and has nothing to do with me just not having the thing.
Yeah. But I mean, when you were getting rid of everything, you love Xbox so much you were like, I should really keep this, right?
Okay. In my defense, I didn't immediately get rid of Xbox. I immediately got rid of GameCube. That is what happened. Yeah, immediately.
Oh, shh! Don't tell the podcast they love GameCube.
I know.
They hate Xbox. They love GameCube.
But okay, in my defense, I also had very little invested in that because if you recall, Johnny, I bought like, I don't know, 80% of that set.
Yeah.
Like
you did.
Just
set. Like it came to you, literally delivered to your door. It couldn't have been easier.
Legit. Yeah, walked into my room.
Stefan, do you want to go over your history of goals and how you spent like 80% of your collecting life collecting sets while realizing that you don't like collecting sets?
I don't like collecting video games. Yeah. I hate video. What am I doing?
Yeah, this will be a lot shorter because Tyler was collecting for 10 years before I started collecting. Going back way back in the day to February of 2016. I actually, the way that I checked this date, Johnny, is I went back and looked for our Sext Engine video.
Oh, excellent. Yeah.
We'll get back to that in a minute.
Yeah.
I tell part of the story kind of a lot. I started really collecting video games hardcore. I mean, I had a shoebox collection for, all of my childhood, but in earnest, I started collecting when my late wife Heather was diagnosed with cancer, and that was in February-ish of 2016, It was at this point, before I was known at all for video game collecting, I was very well known for collecting Ninja Turtles. And I had, at the time, this was before the Nickelodeon buyout, and it was sort of in a wilderness period for the brand. So I had literally every Playmates toy that was ever manufactured. I had literally every variant of every comic book. Like I had reached my definition of done with turtle collecting. And about that same time, Heather had gotten sick, and I was looking for something to sort of help me not think about that all day. And so I was asking these really existential questions about that collection, because it felt like once I hit that definition of done, that collection went from being this thing that I was, and I'm sure some of you, at least some of you can relate, that it went from being this thing that I was growing and nurturing and caring for, and it became this thing that was just stagnating in my apartment. And so I was asking these really existential questions like, does this collection define me? Because I actually had made, similar to the name that I've made myself in other retro circles now, like I had made a considerable name for myself in that community as well, the toy collecting community. And
is Stefan calling himself a celebrity? What's going on here, Jeff?
Yes.
Yes.
By that time, I had already been in multiple Turtles documentaries, and yes. So I had really been starting to ask myself these questions, like, does this collection define me, and what would I be without it? And Heather was getting sick, and I was looking for something else to do, and so I had just sort of serendipitously pulled out my shoebox collection of video games, and what was in there, like Mario 3 and Mega Man 2 and DuckTales and Mega Man X and Super Punch-Out and Mario World, just just a smattering of good titles. And I decided that that's what I was going to try to do, is to see whether or not I could start collecting sets of video games as a thing. And so I was in this period, and actually, going back a second, there was a time when I was working at, where was I? Disney Interactive Studios in 2006. There was a brief time when me and another coworker had decided that we were going to try to, and I've just recently found these old eBay photos, but we were going to try to put together a Super Nintendo set and just flip it, just like something to do, right? We're just going to put it together and flip it. And that was back when Ninja Gaiden Trilogy was the most expensive sought after game on the Super. So that. I was way more into it than he was, and so that petered out, and I probably got 3/4 into that set and sold it all back on eBay. But because again, at that point, it was just we were literally just trying something to do together. And so when he ducked out, so did I. So anyway, that had kind of planted the seed in my head of collecting games as a thing. So I decided, hey, this would be something cool to pick back up. So I started doing that at a pretty heavy clip, because remember, I had this collection that had a significant monetary value, right, at the time, that I had no connection to. So I was able to sort of use it as a piggy bank and sort of move fun money into, move money that was already spent on something fun, move into something else that was spent on something fun. And I was trying to distract myself from this horrible thing in my life. So I was, living in Southern California, as Johnny can attest, especially around that time. Some of them had petered out by now, but you couldn't throw a rock without hitting a retro store. And so I would be physically in a different store. I had a loop that I would do 7 days a week. And every day I would be, I think for at least a week, every week I would be I would be in a different retro store, like physically, and I would just buy them out, essentially. Buy them out of, at the time, the first set that I wanted to do was Super Nintendo. So yeah, I would just buy whatever they had that I didn't have. So I did the Super Nintendo set in 2.5 months.
That's the dumbest shit you've done in your entire life. Also, I just want to point out, you started in 2016, and the fact that you had collected 3/4 of an entire Super Nintendo set was just like a footnote. Like, oh yeah, back before I was a collector, I collected 3/4 of an entire Super Nintendo set.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, and so honestly, and Johnny was there for this. This is actually how I met Johnny. At around that time, I found Nintendo Age, which almost turned me off of the hobby because the Nintendo Age community at the time were pieces of shit generally. That's
maybe an overstatement, but there was definitely
they were being pieces of shit to me.
There was like a select group of Nintendo Age guys who were really high on and they were the max posters. Like, if you were there, they were posting always, and they always had an opinion, whether that opinion was valid or necessary on something. So they always had to say something, and they found you quickly. Because there was a lot of good people on Nintendo Age, but they quietly recessed from what Nintendo Age was becoming at the time.
Yeah, the good people certainly weren't responding to my posts.
No.
and so there you go. There's your qualifier. But yeah, because I was, I'd come on the scene, and all they saw was this guy coming in with, a significant amount of money to spend, and going through. That's when speed collector was a very common term.
You speed collector. Did they call you a shelf collector?
Yeah, I don't even remember the last time someone used the term speed collector, but it was a hot term at the time.
Yeah, now that thank God you did it fast.
Right.
Man, can you imagine if it had taken longer?
Yeah.
Right. I think everyone lived through 2012 to 2017 and then 2019, and it's like, oh, I gotta collect fast. And now everyone has had some point where they've FOMO'd some shit, so they're like, yeah, speed collecting's the way to go.
Yeah. So yeah, I was getting called to speed collector, and it hit a crescendo when I had bought this lot. Johnny, I know you remember it because this is literally the post in which I met you. Yep. But I had posted this lot of, it was just a really nice, clean lot of SNES RPGs, like CIB, like pretty much every notable SNES RPG. And I'd gotten it for not a song, but a good deal. And today it would be a song, but I was really excited to post about that. And that was not the response that I received, except for, honestly, I think it was Johnny and Bronte that were like, y'all can go fuck yourself. This kid is doing a great job. And so that's actually how Johnny and I met. And that's, I think, a couple months later, we ended up going to the Portland Retro Gaming Expo.
Yeah.
Where we stayed in this Airbnb that legit had a sex dungeon.
Yeah, that was weird.
It was really weird.
That was weird. I would stay there again.
You would try. Yeah, 10 out of 10. But it was really weird. So over the course of the next several years, I think Johnny would probably call me. I think he did call me a trash collector. That I really was more all about just seeing how quickly I could amass this collection, similar to I think Tyler, but except I was older and had more money when I was doing it. And so I ended up doing 10 North American sets, if you include the little ones like Virtual Boy and
Sega Pico. I sent you that listing.
Pico.
That was a great
Pico
deal.
is one of them. Yeah, Pico is one that I bought just in one shot. Thanks, Tyler.
$500 for the whole Pico set, complete in box. What a deal!
It was really good, and I think I bought the Virtual Boy set all one shot too. So then I guess I was probably, it couldn't have been that long because it's only been, 6 years. A couple years into it, I sort of realized that I was enjoying the hunt for games more than I was enjoying actually having these games. And that at the time, because this was before like the sealed boom, sealed wasn't even really on my personal radar as a thing you would do, and so like game collecting really felt like it was more expensive than it was difficult. And I, as someone who was looking for the difficulty, I started looking into other things. I was like, okay, so like I got this set collecting thing down. Like what else is out there for me to collect? What's harder? And so I started collecting point of sale displays. That was probably the first turn. And I will always remember Johnny, like me being scared when the like sealed boom started to happen. Johnny and Tyler were I had said that I was concerned that those people were going to start like, you know, collecting point of sale stuff and that it was going to boom the market. And you two were calling me absolutely insane that would never happen. And it completely happened. Now fiber optic signs are like $5,000 to $10,000. But yeah, so I was doing statues and fiber optic signs and neons and, you know, standees and all that kind of stuff. And I obviously I didn't get everything, but I got to the point where I was like, okay, I have most of what I want. I think there's one fiber optic sign that I still want. If anybody wants to sell me a Super Nintendo fiber optic sign, by the way.
What, you don't want the Globe one, the World Nintendo Globe?
Nah.
Oh, I don't even know how many are out there. I just know one guy has 2, which is just the rudest collector ever.
Super rude.
The worst. That guy's the worst.
I mean,
why'd you do it?
If you're listening to this show right now and you don't know about the Fiber World of Nintendo Globe, I think my podcast host here might poo-poo it. Man, it's the coolest Nintendo sign that you could possibly get. It's a giant fiber optic globe and it spins. So cool.
It does spin. It has a little motor.
And it's like $30,000 or something.
Yeah, something crazy like that. Well, I think it's less that it's $30,000 and more that it's just not for sale.
There's just not a lot of them.
Yeah. Because I've never seen a collector sell one of those to another collector. It's always like collectors offering them for insane prices and then other people finding in the wild. Like all the new ones that I see coming, the very small handful of them that come to market do so not through collectors to collectors, but it's through someone finding one in the wild and then being really happy because the only other the only other metric they have to compare it to is these collectors asking $30,000.
And then do they sell it to a private collector instead of just putting it on eBay like they should?
Yes.
What is wrong with people? Guys, don't try to figure out the price of something you can't figure out the price of. Just put it on eBay.
So the real turning point was when I had been looking for specifically Nintendo gameplay counselor jackets. And how that happened was I was flipping through an issue of Nintendo Power #1, and the first advertisement in Nintendo Power #1 is an ad for the gameplay counselor hotline. And there's these 3 kids that are looking at Nintendo Power, and they have these gray jackets on them. And I just had the thought of, I wonder if those jackets actually exist. So I started looking for those and talking to hordes and hordes of former gameplay counselors, and then through that there was a lot of conversations around like, oh well, I don't have any of my gameplay counselor stuff, but I do have this, or I don't have my jacket, but I have all this other stuff, or like I have the box that I walked out of Nintendo with on my last day, you know, like the last day office box that everyone has like a couple of in their garage. And so I just started collecting like weird Nintendo employee stuff, like trophies and paperwork, and I've like someone's 401k plan from Nintendo from like 1990.
That's it. I mean, How many other people have that?
Yeah, right. It's just weird shit. Like I was just like, that's why I really love those like last day boxes, because those are the finds that have like just odd paperweights and rulers, and that's how I found my Earthbound ruler. It was just like some dude just had it in a box in his garage.
He's like, yeah, I got that.
Yeah. He's like, yeah, they were just handing them out here. And then at one point I had talked to a counselor that said, I don't have any of my counselor stuff, but after I left gameplay counseling, I started doing art for Nintendo Power Magazine, and I still have some of that. Would you be interested? and like in a very like cartoon GIF manner, like the camera zoomed in on my tiny brain that started to shake and then it exploded. It had never occurred to me that that was something that would still exist and that would be available to collect. And furthermore, anything that I would find would be the only one. And like that's really what like got me super hot on looking for Nintendo Power magazine art, not just because I of course I loved Nintendo Power and had nostalgia for it, and in fact, and it's funny because people who have nostalgia for that magazine tend to have specific nostalgia for that magazine that transcends any of the game content in it. That's how I started kind of getting on the hunt for looking for original art for Nintendo Power magazine, and that's then blossomed into other things Nintendo Power related, but then I kind of got to the point where I was like, okay, well, now that I have all this stuff, at this point I'm sitting on around 400 pieces of original art from Nintendo Power magazine, and a lot of like ancillary production materials and rough drafts for things and sketches and paperwork and all sorts of stuff. And so I was like, okay, well, what do I do with this? Like, I don't want to just have it. Like, what is the end game? And that's when I decided that I was going to form a museum, and that's where the interactive art collection came from. And so now I take that collection and I travel with it, and that is kind of my end game. I do feel like I've like hit my like final form on this collecting journey. Like, this is just what I want to do with the rest of my life. I was recently talking to 2K, who is my until a few days from now is my employer, and we were talking about this collection for an article that they did, and I said, look, I do this job so I can afford to do that job, and it's really true. Like, I feel like it's become sort of my life's work, and it's just kind of what I want to do, and that's, I think, a pretty decent snapshot of my journey through this collecting thing.
And and this is the end game. There's nothing next. It's just more of this.
Yeah, I mean, where would if there is something else, I haven't figured it out yet. Like, I don't have a plan. Like, this is the end of the long game, right? This is the end of the master plan. I don't know if there's another master plan. Cool, but I just don't know where it would go from here.
It can't be the end game. I think Stefan is, some years from now, Stefan will realize there's nothing more Nintendo Power to get, because he will have traced down every single person who has ever worked on the magazine.
Not
He's going to be like, I need to go to Nintendo of Japan and start tracking down original Nintendo of Japan employees and getting all of their internal documents. And that will be the final frontier, because you'll have to learn a new language and deal with a company and culture that is not going to want to give you anything.
Anything. Yeah, it's certainly been. I have about 70 pieces of art that from Nintendo Power that were originated in Japan, and that's only because I found someone who had later immigrated, right? So and took a bunch of art with her. So it was a Japanese artist that was in Seattle. And that was the only reason that I was ever able to source it. I have yet to source Japanese art from Japan.
Red the Game Shark did. Red the Game Shark with his Devil Crash original art from Japan.
He did, yeah.
Getting that original art from Japan, super hard. What a cool guy.
You've done it. You've invoked the name. We have to do the thing. All right. If you're looking for import games and you want them for cheap, please contact Red the Game Shark at Cheap Cheap Games, where you get your games for cheap.
All right, I think, Stefan, me and you started off in similar places, and we have ended up in entirely different places. And I will say, like, you sure seem like you're at your final form. You definitely, to me, seem like, the Nintendo Power and art guy and internal weird Nintendo stuff guy. Like, you are clearly way more passionate about that than you were about your GameCube set that you sold immediately. So
yeah.
It makes a lot of sense. What started you off down the full set path? Is it just that you were friends with Johnny and Johnny has a mental disorder that causes him to collect all this?
He was doing this before he met me.
Yeah, no, it was just that it gave me a very specific parameter to work within that I didn't have to think about, right? That I was like, this is the thing I'm doing, because the first one was the Super Nintendo set, and that was, again, this was at a time where I was like actively looking for something to distract me a lot and distract me very quickly, right? And so it was really, the set collecting came out of just like, oh, here's a very rigid parameter that I don't have to think about, and I can just like have my list in my back pocket. At that point, I was just using a paper list, and it was easy. The structure made it easy for me.
And then video games became too easy, and no one wants a hobby that's too easy.
Except Tyler, who's like, let me beat the easiest games ever. This is my hobby.
Such a damn wimp, Johnny. You have no idea. I was the worst. And now, like, if people look back on that, on me, then they'd be like, well, we need games of all different difficulties. And it's not about the challenge. It's about the fun. And everyone should be able to have fun with. Fuck that. There are so many games you could play. All right, Johnny, let's move on from
Tyler didn't want to finish. Yeah, he didn't want to finish that sentence, which was, fuck fun, get good, scrubs.
Fuck fun, get good.
That was the completion of that thought, wasn't it?
If there was a cable car that went up to the top of Mount Everest, Johnny, what's the point? What's the point?
To see the beautiful view?
99.9% of people would do it, and they wouldn't even have like the 2.5% chance that you die on Mount Everest, which is like the actual death rate.
2.5%, isn't it higher than that?
It might be like 3%. What is it? I don't know. I don't know. The Everest death rate. All right, let's, instead of having you talk, let's look up the Everest death rate. I can't believe that anyone. Holy shit! 14% fatality rate.
Yeah, I was gonna say Everest is really difficult.
What who is climbing this? These are like a lot of there's just like rich tourists, right? They see a 14% death rate and they're like, oh yeah, that seems like something to do with my tons of money and amazing life.
You know what? You know what's cool is because you kind of have to have money to like go do it, and you have to be like pretty trained. And then when you get to hike the mountain, you've got your Sherpa and everything with you. You get to walk past the corpses of all the people who failed because they don't take the bodies down the mountain. They leave them there. It's a grim, frozen reminder of what could happen to you.
That can't be true. Is that true?
It is true, yeah. You cannot take the mountains down the body. I mean, some have come down, but most frozen dead bodies stay frozen dead bodies up there. Feel free to Google
definitely
that.
Above the death zone because it's hard enough to just exist up there, let alone do actual work.
Yep.
Johnny, if you watched mountaineering, caving, and diving disaster videos, you would know all about the bodies that have to be left in all sorts of places.
No,
you should get in my YouTube algorithm game.
No,
I was just Googling for this, right? And I got to, do they leave and the first Google the first Google response was bodies on Mount Everest.
Yeah. How do you feel about that now? Worse, right? Not better. And so
while some bodies have been removed, it is estimated that over 100 remain on the mountain.
There you go.
But don't worry, a lot of them have probably fallen like off the trail and into like ditches and stuff. So you're probably good. You probably
they're like most people don't die off the trail, Tyler.
Well, if you fall, then your body is somewhere inaccessible, probably.
No, you don't fall.
Excuse me, Johnny. I'm looking at the statistics. The two biggest statistics, 68 died to avalanche, 67 to falls. And it's much lower exposure, altitude sickness, heart attack.
But the point is, there are bodies there on the trail that didn't fall off the mountain or get swept away on an avalanche. They just stopped being able to climb and died.
Yeah, they just sat down and they're like, oh, this feels nice.
Yeah.
Let me just rest for a while. And after I take a nap, I'll get back up and keep going.
Yeah.
You got Green Boots from 1996. That's the picture you see all the time. Yeah.
There you go.
I don't think Green Boots has ever even been identified.
So, and what you guys may have missed in this like grim talk we're having suddenly and for reasons I can't fathom.
100% your fault. You did this.
Tyler talked about his algorithm where he watches these insane serial killer videos, and not videos about serial killers, videos a serial killer would watch. He's like, let me watch a bunch of videos about people who die in cave-ins all the time. Are you fucking maniac? What is wrong with you?
Yeah, like there's entire YouTube channels just dedicated to like caving and diving disasters, and the algorithm started recommending to me, and I'm like, all right, algorithm, yeah. And every video is just like, he dived and went too deep and couldn't come back up and he died. And then the rescuers went down and one of the rescuers died. And then they closed that place for diving because it was too dangerous. And every video is the exact same thing, and they stretch it out to 15 minutes. And I'm just like, yeah, man, I'll just put this on in the background, listen to some people die in horrible drowning deaths.
Yeah, with British overtones, because that's who narrates these things.
Yeah, it makes it classier that way. That way it doesn't seem like just like, death porn videos. It's just like, oh yeah, this really, guy sounds concerned and classy about it.
He's concerned but not weepy.
Tyler's going to edit all of this out.
No, he's definitely leaving it in.
He's leaving it in?
What? So last time, last episode, someone said like, I love when your son interrupts you, Johnny, and starts talking about something. And I think I edit all those out, and I'm worried that I left in like one of our 5-minute interruptions where JD just comes up and starts saying random shit.
You must.
It's my favorite.
You must have left it in because he came in that the Strange, I think, said like, "Oh, I love when your son comes in and tells you he's an Indominus Rex."
But when that happens, like we get sidetracked for like 3 minutes of just like dead air, and I'm worried I left something like that in the last episode.
You must have. Go check it.
A professional editor would have never done that if we had one of those.
Yeah. Anyways, Tyler's a maniac who likes dark, grim things, and Stefan is a speed collector to get us all back on track.
Okay. Yes. And now he's speed collecting everything related to Nintendo Power. Because Stefan, why don't you just wait for prices to come down on that Nintendo Power stuff once you find it?
Because that's not how that works when you're working with one of one objects. Also, people are dying.
Oh man. Yeah.
And not just cave-ins on mountains or under the water.
No.
Yeah, Stefan, you want to get me that Ocarina of Time cart though?
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Okay.
So you got to play the long game with this stuff, Tyler.
All right.
Got to play the long game.
I mean, you play the long game. Still the craziest thing that you got, I think, is like all that Dragon Warrior stuff, especially the Dragon Warrior map. But like, I don't even think you've been collecting that kind of stuff long enough for that to have been the long game, because that seems like something that should take a lifetime for you to get. But you still got that Dragon Warrior map.
I mean, there's already been instances where like I will like someone will say like 2 years ago or 3 years ago, someone tells me that they have a box of something in their garage, and if they come across it one day, that they'll give it to me, and then a box of prototypes shows up on my doorstep 3 years later. Like there's weird stories like that where I just like I plant the seed in someone's head and then walk away, and then it blossoms years later.
I gotta plant more seeds.
You do. That's what it's
people
all about.
Stupid old Apple games and see what happens.
It's never about walking away with the thing that you want. It's all about making sure that they believe that when the time comes, you are the best home for the thing.
I mean, that sounds like it with one things, but I'm just some guy collecting mass-produced retail items, Stefan. So there's always going to be multiple people who want my stuff.
That's true.
Stupid stuff. Like the stuff I want, Stefan, they sold it in a store to just regular people, like me and Johnny. Like the regular people, the normies. Like people could just
why would anyone care about that?
For like $40, they would just go in and buy a video game. And now I want that stuff. Like who would ever want that kind of thing?
Just us. Just us.
All right, Johnny, you are, I'm going to say, the person who has changed the least of us over the years, because you're still a big, stupid set collector buying checklist garbage. But do you want to explain your goals?
No, thanks for summing me up so succinctly. And that's our show, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Johnny started collecting sets, and he's still collecting sets. Yeah. The end.
I mean, there is a nobility to the fact that, like, he started off and like, he figured it out, and he didn't change. I don't know.
So, let's see. It's 2004, and I'm a maniac, so I start making lists. Actually, it starts, and I've said this before. It starts, I walk into a Game Crazy, not even like a GameStop, because I've been in like GameStops and stuff, and when I go into those and like Electronics Boutique and EBs and stuff, I mean, that's the same thing, but depending where you are and what they were called. And I've seen plenty of retro games. Nothing strikes me about them at all. I'm there for new games. Nothing is happening. I don't care. I'm still playing new games. and like I'm not even playing that many games at this point in my life. I've just started dating my wife, I think, 2000. Let's see. No, I bet we've been together like a year. Like, yeah, so she's got me like an Xbox, but I'm not like on the retro train. I still have some PS1 games because they're not that old. I still have a couple old Super Nintendo games. At this point, I've even sold a couple of PS1 games, which made me cringe and decide to never sell anything to a GameStop ever again. Only took one time. Sold an Ogre Battle, and when they were like, they just quickly tell you, like, you bring in your 10 games and they like quickly tell you the total. And then you find out that Ogre Battle you sold was like $3 or whatever. And you just feel bad. You're like, I would have just kept that for $3, but that's not the big picture at the time. Anyways, I walk into this game crazy and it hits me. I'm like, man, I should own every game I've ever beaten. And I beat a lot of Nintendo games as a kid. So I was like, I want that. That's when the switch flips. I'm like, okay, it doesn't matter. I'm not buying this to play it, even though I might go play it. What I want to do is I want to get all the games I used to play. And we were at this friend Eric's house, and we did play a bunch of these games. Like, he had his old Nintendo set up. He had like kind of a small retro collection at the time. And I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go buy every game. So I bought and it was just carts only. I'm like, I'm just going to go buy a bunch of this stuff. And that started. And then, what happens with me is the minute I become consumed with an idea, Full Crazy comes out. Like, if I become fully consumed, then I like start making a list and I start doing research in the way that you can do in 2004, which was a lot more limited than it is now. I'm looking for places. I find Nintendo Age, and yeah, and it like whatever the sickness is, and I'm like buying all these games, and I then start thinking about like what games meant to me. And I was like, as a kid, I said I always wanted to complete a Super Nintendo set. Not that those were the words I used. I said, I want to own every Super Nintendo game. Like, that was, just like my refrain, because Super Nintendo was my core console as a kid. Even though I had a lot of Nintendo, I was just like, man, Super Nintendo was the one that I worked the hardest for. That's the one that I put a story out on the podcast for. Super Nintendo was, is the one that lives in my brain forever. So I was like, yeah, I'm gonna probably do that. And then for some reason, Saturn got lumped in there too. And I was like, I really like Saturn. This is like a weird system that I found, like, because I found the Saturn as an adult while I was in the military, and I was like, this is like a fun thing. Like, there's not that many of these games. Maybe I could complete these, and these are like cool cases. And I would really have like, even though it hadn't been that long since I got the Saturn, I had a weird nostalgia for the Saturn because I was not enjoying my time in the military at this point when I found the Saturn, and I like found Shining Force 3, and it was such like a happy, weird moment for me in a time when I was kind of unhappy. And, I was like, man, the Saturn, like, just that emotional, like, fix, like, I found, like, I was not enjoying anything around me. I didn't like the people I was with for the most part. I didn't like the situation. And I found this thing I liked suddenly, and my brain was just like, we love this. Thank you for finding some source of joy in a time when you are mostly miserable. Good job. So Saturn becomes part of the thing, and Super Nintendo, and then like Nintendo every game I beat, and I just I'm thinking about all of these moments because I can't just think about one thing. I have to, like, everything builds on itself. I'm like, oh yeah, I want these games I beat, and I always say I wanted to get every Super Nintendo game ever. Like, how hard would that be? I mean, I'll start with just the games I've beaten and my favorite ones, but like, if I see any, I should buy all of them. I should buy every single one I can find. And then Saturn got lumped into that. So this is what I start going out looking for. And I'm hitting garage sales. I'm on Nintendo Age. I'm going to Game Dude, Stefan. And turns out there weren't a lot of Nintendo games or Super Nintendo games there. But I am going to these garage sales, and I'm always finding Genesis games. So I like, and just lots and Dreamcast stuff. So I'm just buying, like, you get there, they're like, oh, sold all my Nintendo games, but I got this Sega stuff in the back if you want it for like $5. So it's just like, okay, sure. So this is my foundation. I'm kind of at this point a garbage man. I have a goal in mind, and this is 2004, 2005, like I said, even 2006. I have this goal, but I'm not super good at achieving it yet. And I mean, I am, using eBay now. I'm like, okay, I'm going to start targeting buying some of my favorite games. And then that's the point where I start buying games in boxes. It's like, oh, well, it's not that much more for the box at this point, or the cart is almost as much as the box, or sometimes there was a big disparity. And you're like, oh, okay. Like I got a Chrono Trigger, and like that was one of the first ones I went back and got. I was like, oh man, I have to buy this in the box. Like it has its map and everything. Like if I just bought the cart, that would be weird. Like the maps and everything are important. So with Super Nintendo, there was a lot of RPGs there. So I was like, oh, very much so. Everything needs to be in the box if I can get it. It needs to have all the maps and manuals. For the games I cared about most, they all needed to be complete. But I wasn't like a complete box collector yet. It was going that way. And then as I bought more Super Nintendo games like that, usually on eBay, I started to feel that like, oh, carts only. This is not the thing. This isn't the whole experience. This isn't everything I wanted. This is not the memory. I don't have the memory of, hey, it's a cart in my hand. I have a memory of opening the box and seeing the thing, which is kind of why I don't care about the manual for a lot of games, because most games, I didn't give a shit about the manual. I plugged the game in. Certain games, I always cared about the manual because I'm like, I want to read and know about it. Especially RPGs, all the maps. So an RPG, I definitely wanted the manuals and all the maps because that was part of my experience as a child.
See, you're smart for doing that, Johnny. Because, I mean, both I'm dumb as a kid and I was dumb when I was first collecting, because my experience with boxes for new games was 100% tearing it straight down the middle, throwing out everything. I would keep the manuals. I'd throw out the box like within 30 seconds of getting my hands on a video game. And then really the only reason I started collecting complete in box is because I essentially ran out of cartridges that I wanted. And now that I'm targeting more specific games, it's like, yeah, I want the nicest copies of the games I want, but
yeah, which includes the box. Like if you're gonna have a nice copy, it's gotta have the box.
Yeah. And even now, and like when the period you're talking about, like complete in box games were not valued highly enough. And I would say even now there are a lot of games where condition and completeness, while they are a lot more important than they were even 5 years ago, I still think, I mean, not hyping complete in box games, but I do think a lot of complete in box stuff still undervalued compared to cart prices.
Yeah, I mean, and that's been going up for years. Like the ratio is getting smaller. That was like one of our best episodes we ever did, was where we tried to talk people into buying CIB games by looking at the ratio. Like how much is the cart compared to, like I think I even made a spreadsheet for, I think, was it NES I did this for, or Super NES? I can't remember what set I did for. I'm like, here, we used like price charting or something. I'm like, here's their suggested CIB price. Here is their suggested cart price. I'm like, and here's the ratio. And if you're trying to buy these things individually, here's how much it's worth. It's like, so even if you buy it to strip it for parts and sell the other thing, this is the best deal, is to buy the CIB. And this is when it's not a deal at all. Like we just showed people how close in value it was. That was an episode I really enjoyed doing because it was true. And while that ratio is getting worse, it's still true on a lot of stuff. Like, especially if you're going to piecemeal it together later, I can tell you, as someone who was going through this mishmash of stages, like deciding not arbitrarily, but for my own reasons, like this manuals are important here, but not important in this game. So I don't care if it has a manual or a box. Cause like, oh, I beat that game, but I only ever traded for that game. And the kid didn't have the box. So I only ever got the cartridge. So I don't care about the box or the manual because my memory of the thing is just the cart. Like I was just relying on whatever my sensory input for that item was to determine what condition I was buying it in, which was crazy. And then like after buying enough Super Nintendo games, I was like, I should be buying more manuals and more boxes. And now I need to go out and get all the boxes for these dumb cart only games I got because they were a deal or something. So yeah, I piecemealed a lot of stuff. And then now my Super Nintendo collection is like a little bit regretful because like they're not all as complete as they could be because tons of them have posters. And I'll never have those posters now, or certain prints have posters.
I bet a bunch of your manuals aren't correct matches for those boxes now, Johnny.
A lot of those I went and I fixed.
Okay.
So like, yeah, I did spend a good meticulous time like seeing if it like, okay, is this the right manual? Also, like the right manual is Like, as long as it's not the black and white Majesco manual in the wrong box, I'm like pretty okay. If it's a -1 in a regular, in a non-1 box, it's fine because they mix that stuff anyways, even at factory. It's not clean like everyone thinks it was. It's not like if you have a -1 box, it definitely has a -1 manual and a -1 cart. That is not how that exists. That only means there's been a revision to that to that component specifically, and not every component may get a revision. So you could have a -2 cart in a regular box. That shit happens.
So the thing is, what you say is totally true, but if you have pieced together a bunch of games, at some point, you have definitely made something that never existed.
Oh, yeah.
And the thing is, because things are all mixed up, you'll just never know which game it is, John.
Nope, I'll never know, and I'm not trying to know.
That's the difference between Johnny and Tyler. Tyler, it would drive him crazy. Johnny does not give a fuck.
Yeah,
I've given up, but man, components are so hard. I've told this story where I replaced every single dust sleeve in my NES games. This was, in the 2000s. I replaced them all with Nintendo shiny sleeves because those were the coolest sleeves, and I've never gone and fixed that. And because of NES prices, most of my complete in box NES stuff, I got 10, 15 years ago. So just all my NES games are messed up. They all have the wrong dust sleeves. And I'm never going to bother to go fix it because it's such a fucking stupid thing I did.
Yeah, but you do have the cooler dust sleeve on all of your games. That is true.
I do. My copy of Bible Adventures is sitting there with a shiny Nintendo dust sleeve in it.
Sweet. Excellent news, Tyler.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Anyways, so yeah, this is like 2006, 2007. I'm starting to evolve. And then this is where an era where I shift. Like, I'm just not finding any of this stuff, and like, it's hard. So now I'm only piecemealing stuff off of eBay, and from the forums. I'm buying some complete stuff still on eBay. I've been hitting up video stores as they're closing. Hey, do you have any stuff? And this where I find a bunch of N64 stuff, because that's what was going out of it. Like, video stores still had remains. So I just went to my local video game stores, or my video stores, and I was like, before they all closed, the ones that weren't like Blockbuster, most of them were already gone, but in like 2007, there was still a few existing. I was like, hey, do you guys have any stuff, or do you still rent games? Do you want to get rid of all this stuff? Like, are your N64 games still being rented out? And they're like, no, please make me a fair offer on these games and get them off of my shelf. We could use shelf space. Or, I got just the boxes in the back if you want those. These were things I encountered, which is also a terrible idea because most of them wrote like the name of their video store in Sharpie across the box so you wouldn't steal it, or put a giant ugly sticker on it. Anyways, this is the type of collector I was. These are the things I was doing. I was looking for deals. I was going... I was still going to garage sales at that point. Everything was a value proposition. I did have sets in mind, but I was not going as hard as I should have been. And I was still acquiring, and you could call it a garbage collector. It's like, if I saw something that was a good deal, I would get it. I wasn't like, if I saw a bunch of Maddens, I wouldn't just go pick up those because they were a good deal. There had to be some value in the product. It wasn't just that it was cheap. It had to be like, okay, I think these are worth it, and I could either trade these or sell these. Like, Madden games were like just a zero figure. It's like, you can only spend money on these. You can never make money on these. So that wasn't just the mass consumption. I wasn't seeing big box computer games for 10 cents and being like, I should also buy these. So there was a little bit of rhyme or reason. Not a completely garbage collector, but I was definitely buying more than I needed to, which enabled me to do all these sets later. Enabled and also preyed on my mental weakness, which is like, I need to do sets. Things need to be complete as much as I can make them. Get about 2008, 2009, I really start focusing on Genesis. That's where the Sega Age stuff comes in. We have this tight group on Sega Age, and we start making lists because no one knows what's going on with Genesis or cardboard boxes or Sega CDs. So, and I've been staunchly making these lists. I want to tell you about my list at the time. Some of them are handwritten, which is gross. I used to carry around a folder. I just brought this 3-ring binder in the car with me that had all of my notes and everything, all my collector's notes. I had sections and tabs, and some of it, if I did it at work on a computer, they'd be printed off. I had Game Dude price sheets in there, Stefan. You'll appreciate that. I hole punched and tossed in this
Nice.
binder. Then the Digit Press book, I had their rarity guide that I also kept in that folder. And I just brought this stuff with me. And like, I'd be walking into stores like an insane person with this binder, and I'd be like looking stuff up as I hold it. And I could see the look in whoever was the customer service person there, you know, whoever had to work the register. They'd just look at me and their eyes would glaze over, and they was just like, this guy's a nightmare. Oh my God, my worst dreams have come true. And this is the customer I'm going to be dealing with. A guy who walks into a game store with a binder and, you know, is calculating things. And smartphones were newish there. So like, I mean, it was a mess. It was a mess, but I was trying to get organized the only way I knew how. So, yeah, that's what going on. Then, like I said, Sega Age. Then we start getting the spreadsheet mania that I like had started building in small things, and that's about when I just started going crazy. Then it was like lists for everything. Now it's like easier, and I started doing some Excel trading, so I got better at it. How to pull data out of places. And this begins my process of becoming a data miner and like learning about data. And yeah, I've continued that part of it, you know, and just getting more advanced every time I can on my list. And to the day that I see all my old lists, which people still use, and I think they're just trash and I want to throw them away. I just cringe when I look at them. But they're still fine. They're serviceable checklists, but they're not the type of list I would really want to use, as we talked about in the last episode. So that was that era. And then that's really about then is when I started complete sets. I did the cardboard set. Like I finished 32X, super hard set to complete. But that was...
Johnny, there is no 32X set. It's all just part of Genesis.
Yes, thanks for using my jokes against me. Like, just remember that you said that.
I don't even know if it's a joke. I don't know.
It's real. It says Genesis on the box. Just saying. It says Genesis on the box.
If 32X isn't a set, then Outback Joey doesn't count for the Genesis set because it doesn't say Genesis on it.
It's a Genesis and a Genesis shell. I mean, I don't know what else you would want. It plays on a Genesis.
Yeah, 32X game doesn't, though. It plays on a thing that plugs into a Genesis.
It plays on a 32X Genesis.
Shut up. All right, keep going. I'm waiting for the point in your story when you decide, like, yeah, I should collect Wii and Vita. That's a sensible thing to do. Because, like, I get it. All right, Super Nintendo is the childhood system. You want all the Super Nintendo stuff. Your motivations are very clear. But I want you to keep going here.
Well, no, and I've just laid the foundation for how Vita, like, this is the point. I tell you, like, I'm buying all this other stuff. I'm finding Genesis stuff, which I didn't care about. I joined a forum for it because other people were kind of into it, and I knew I had all this stuff. So that's where this becomes important. I've told you I have a random smattering of PS1 games. The point is, I wasn't being discerning enough. So I told you I picked up Dreamcast games. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, okay, I guess I want sets for all of this. That's where this is going. As the list thing happens, there's this horror to my brain that says the minute a list happens, you got to put an X or a check in that box on that list. So like, what are you doing with that list otherwise? Why would you make a list? So I used to know this about myself. So I used to only like make lists of things I wanted, because if I made a list of everything, then everything on that list became everything I wanted. Do you understand? Like, that's what the sickness is.
I understand the sickness.
So this is what happened. And then as I made more lists, and then you find out that data is so fucking bad everywhere. Everybody is so bad at making lists. All lists are terrible and awful and incorrect. They're all bad, including my own. I'm not absent from this. So I start making lists for everything. I'm like, well, can I see your Wii list? Can I see this list? Like, so anytime a group was like making a list, I'm like, let me help you. Can I join in on this? Because I'm confident, at least more confident in myself than I am in others in making lists. And then you find other people you trust who are doing a good job, and you're like, okay, let's team up and make better lists. And this is what happened. That's how we got there, Tyler. That's 2009, 2010, 11. I'm just buying more. And I'm like, by 2012, I'm like, okay, I'm going to start completing sets now. Like, I've got enough money. I sell off a bunch of Magic cards. I'm like, I put a bunch of that towards Nintendo games that were expensive at the time. Like my little Samson that I think I spent $700 on, which was like a lot of money. Still a lot of money to spend on a video game. But like, a nice one. I'm like, I got a nice little Samson now. It's complete in box. I got a Donkey Kong, or not Donkey Kong, a Flintstones 2. I'm like, I'm really working on the Super Nintendo set, so I complete Nintendo. I start completing Super Nintendo. Dreamcast was like basically complete. I only needed to go buy filler for that. And then I was buying Wii games because I owned a Wii because it was of the time. It wasn't like...
Oh, man. I remember that Wii buy that you made at Portland.
Yeah, and then it's like, okay, then like maybe I'll dabble in this. Like games are cheap and they're like going out of stock. So now is like you start to think about, unfortunately, you start to prey on your own old experience. You're like, okay, I knew all the N64 stuff was going out here. So it was at these discount prices. I should have been buying it at this point. This was true. I wish I would have bought Nintendo and Super Nintendo at those points because it was going out and everyone was just getting rid of it. No one cared. And eventually people cared. Now it's expensive. Same thing happens with Wii, with Vita. Vita was kind of like, oh, I'm collecting all these sets. I don't have a Sony set, and PS1 doesn't make sense because that library is so big. And I found this guy selling a bunch of Vita games. I'm like, yeah, I'll buy a bunch of Vita games, and I own a Vita, so I already have some. And like, how close can I get to the set? Like, I might as well go for it. And then Limited Run comes into the picture, and you're just like, well, let's just blow up those dreams. Even though I did it for a while, I cannot. The Limited Run thing becomes a contrast point because you're like, the system is going out. It's dying. It's all cheap. Limited Run comes in while it's already dying, and then the games are no longer cheap. Now it's like, you should not collect a set at full retail. At least that was the prevailing wisdom.
Did Limited Run push up the values of the rest of the games, or just their own game? Oh, wow.
All of it.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, because it made Vita a system to collect for because they made it a collectible. Yeah. You know, not just a dying system. Now it was a collectible system.
Right.
So there was this resurgence in interest for Vita, and they prolonged the death of the Vita for a good long time. And yeah, I eventually was like, I can't keep paying $25 or $45 or $55 for Vita games.
Sure.
I can't keep doing this. This is not how I collect. This is not part of my tenets. So that's why I stopped collecting Vita.
How close did you get?
3/4. At that point, I was 3/4 of the way done. And of the retail set that wasn't Limited Run, I think I was only missing like 10 games. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's still probably about right. And then someone came and bought some from me because they were like, I need to finish this set. And I was like, fine, take these ones. I don't care. But I still have a very healthy supply of Vita games. We kind of the same thing. You were with me on that Portland trip where I was like, I guess I'm going for it. Like, now is the time.
Was it like 700 games? It was a shitload.
It was like more like 300 or 400, but okay. Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot of boxes that I shipped on the plane.
Yeah. Because that's the memory I have is us actually flying home with them.
Yeah, boxes tumbling down
And then I did that with Xbox, I think, the next year.
Yeah. You're like, it worked out, right? They were cheap.
That was a good idea. I was laughing at you at the time, but that was a good idea. Just waiting till the last day of Portland and then just cleaning out someone's table.
Yep. That's what I did. So, yeah, like I'm going on, and this is like, so it's all the same goal. Like, what are my goals? My goals here, to be clear, are to collect sets for anything I've ever made a stupid list for. It's a mistake. It's stupid. And it prevails today because I still I love games. While you were like, oh, well, you're a Nintendo fanboy. I guess I'm a Nintendo fanboy, but what I am more than that is a fan of games. I love games. I love seeing all their little bits and bobs. I like cool, dumb variants. I like all the dumb things about games. I love dumb variant history. I love seeing revisions on stuff. All the stupid minutia that I complain about, I actually love seeing all of it. I like whatever the process was. I love trying to dissect why a bunch of bad business decisions were made that got them to this point. Yeah. I love all of that because that's what it is. Like people think, oh, well, they've got this big plan. No, these were just business decisions and if you've ever worked for a business that, especially a business or in something that is failing, and like, eventually all consoles fail. Like Nintendo doesn't fail, but a console fails. And so what they do is they're propping it up as long as they can. And they're constantly pivoting in what they're doing, in their marketing, in their decisions for production. So all of these things are an ever-changing thing. It's not like we've made a decision and this is how N64 will go. They're like, we're doing this. Oh shit, the sales aren't there. We got to make this change, do this. And so you just have all this weird variance within, and that's every console that's ever existed. That's what happened through all of their production runs. And then as I started to work for companies that used factories, and now knowing exactly how factories works and how things are mass produced, you just look and it's a wonder that there's any kind of consistency. And a lot of it is false consistency applied by collectors. And that's like what I've tried to advocate. It's like, whatever you think is true, you're operating on a lot of assumptions that don't line up with how factories are actually run and how businesses use, especially a multi-component item, which is what games are. There's multiple components in the package that make it what it is. It's not like just a shirt. A shirt is just a shirt, okay? But a video game is like, here's a manual, here's this guide, here's this print advert, here's all this other stuff that has to go into the box to make it the complete part. So multi-component builds in a factory, like if you're like, oh, well, this is the print run here. Like, no, like if they have leftover pieces, they're not going to be like, well, that should be part of this print run. Throw all that stuff away. A factory's job is to, use as many of the components as they can always. Get rid of all of it. No waste, right? Factories hate waste. Companies hate waste. They actively fight it. Anyways, rant over on that. So yeah, and this is where I still am. So nothing has changed since like 2008 when I started, or 2009 when I started making all these lists and deciding on systems, except I've gotten better at not going for full sets and being able to make lists and being like, okay, I just want to know about the system. Collecting the information is the goal more so than the thing. Even though like I made the list and like got the list for 3DS and I was like, yeah, I'm going to go at this. Like I'll start a run. I'll see if I'm interested. Like how far does it go? I'll put a post out. Anyone have a big lot of games that they want to get rid of? Like, how far down this avenue do I want to go? Then I look and I'm like, you know what? Some of this is really stupid. I'm not actually that interested. I'll pull back. I'm fine with like maybe revisiting later. I did that with the Wii, got almost all the way there. An article was released about what the rarest games were. Was semi-accurate, not completely, because it was just one person's personal experience. Love you, Aaron. But that article screwed me on Wii collecting for like 3 years. Then that
was Nintendo Twizer because he had just completed the Wii set and he was like, these are the 40 hardest games for me to get or something. And it was all like not what was popular to think were the rarest games at the time. And it was like someone who had actually gone and done it. And it's like, shit, this guy knows what he's talking about.
Well, and we were in a group, like we were in a private Facebook chat, all of us, me, Retro Thunder, Nick Morgan, like we were in this group called the Weenies, right? Like a little Facebook or not Facebook, Instagram group chat. And we were all building the set at the same time. So he came out and like, not everyone was done like myself. And then I was just like, I can't, now I'm missing like all these 40 games. And now it's just like maximum sports games just suddenly became $150 and these double packs, $200. I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm just going to stop. And that's what I did. I just stopped collecting Wii games and then like would just slowly go pick at it and be like, okay, I'll just get one. And now we'll get to where I'm current day. I did the same thing happened with Xbox. Didn't get popular. I just like Stefan completed it and we were like kind of doing it together and that was fun. But then like the last 80 games just became like, I have to go out and do this by myself. This sucks. So I stopped. Though I do want to finish it. It's still like, again, I still pick up games for it slowly. Like when I'm being burnt out on whatever my current thing is, I'll go look at these like little sets that are existing that I say I'm going to complete. And I'm like, okay, I'll go pick up 3 or 4. With Wii, I basically just said, all right, we're getting this shit done. We're finishing Wii. I just picked up like 40 games or 30 games. So I'm down to like only needing 50 games left for the Wii. So I'm in the finals of that set now. Like I'm like really close to the end and nothing is too expensive. I just bought the most expensive game. So, we're there. And that's how I collect. I have been the same guy. Like I started out as this garbage collector. And then I made sense of that garbage collecting by becoming a set collector. That's your TLDR.
I gotta say, speaking to what you just said about pivoting to Xbox and picking up a game here or there, pivoting away from set collecting has been so good financially in terms of like, if I've got an extra $100 sitting around, and this was, say 5 years ago for me, it is so easy to look at the gaps in my checklist and be like, I could knock out 5 games right now. Because if you have a deep checklist, it is so easy to find a deal on something, and you could just spend whatever money you have on that checklist, no matter what. But if I'm collecting like rare games I basically can't find, I can't do that. I can't go and I can't buy like a copy of a Calibeth for Apple II, which is the predecessor to Ultima, because there's just none for sale. So it's easier to hang on to my money when there's no checklist begging for me to spend money on it.
Yeah, I mean that's part of the problem still. Like I'm finding it harder to spend more money on games. Like buying an expensive game has gotten a lot harder for me. You would have think all the FOMO push would have made it easier. It did not. It made it more difficult for me because even though I think it's easier to justify big prices, it's gotten like most of the sets I care about are complete. Now it's just like dreg sets that like have just been lingering. I'm just filling that out. So it's been really easy for me to like what I've been enjoying most is just like I'm buying my weirdo Halloween games. It's a set that never ends and only expands, and it's liberating because I'm not bound by anything. I'm not bound by a system. I'm not bound by particular nostalgia outside. I love Halloween and I just love seeing what they did. And I can just go wild because I still love buying games. I can just like go do whatever I want.
I mean, that seems like if you were to pivot away from sets or you just complete all the sets, I'm excited to see the Johnny final form of just like, I'm just going to go buy all these 80s horror games that literally no one's ever heard of because there's just an endless amount of like text adventures and dumb little games that just no one collects for all these obscure computers.
That's basically what I've been doing for like the last couple of years. I'm buying more Halloween games than I am set games, right? Like I made this decision on the Wii stuff because I'm like, I really want to finish the Wii. So like I'm going to finish the Wii and then I'm going to knock out maybe Xbox after that, like, because there's only 80 left. If I can find like 40 of them for like $300, I'll just do it. You know, like I'll bite the bullet and just be like, knock a chunk off. And that's kind of where I'm at. Like right now with Wii, I'm like, okay, I just bought this big chunk and now like every month I'll just go buy 10 games until it's done and then I can be done. You know, like, will I complete GBA? I'll just pick away at that as I've been doing. Like that's been like this like weird sub thing where I didn't even make a list for a long time because I didn't want to feel committed. And now I don't even check the list very often. I don't know what I don't have on the GBA, and I don't know on purpose because then every time I saw a GBA game, I'd be like, oh shit. Now people help me out. They send me lists and stuff and I go and like, I'm still like working slowly on GBC, but these are games I pick at slowly and enjoy the process more than like, I got to rush to complete it. And if it never gets complete, I've made peace with that. Like same with original Game Boy. I made the decision I will never complete original Game Boy. And if I do, it might be like, I'll just go grab all the carts that I'm missing to if I want to check a box that says I completed the set, but I'm not going after like Game Boy prices are dumb and I don't care that much about original Game Boy. So it makes no sense to do that other than wanting just to complete the set.
I'm interested to see if you will have any mindset changes if in the near future physical games stop being a thing, because I don't think you're close to like having every physical game ever or anything, but of the people in the world who are even on the path to saying that they have every physical Nintendo game, I think you are somewhat uniquely situated in that you aren't that far away from having every physical game for a Nintendo console that's ever been made.
That's
so
correct.
Even if you have to like fudge it a bit by like maybe getting Game Boy cartridges or something like that, I think I want to see if something snaps in your brain and be like, I could be one of the guys who just has all the Nintendo games and they're not making any more because we live in the digital apocalypse.
Well, I mean, I did that for Sega, and I was like, I've got every Genesis console. Did it. And they're like, well, you don't have all the Game Gear games. I'm like, yeah, well, that's a portable. But I do have every Sega game, you know, like that's like Game Gear is another set like I pick at if I see it. And Game Gear and Game Boy are like kind of the same position where I might, because of what you just said, Tyler, like I have every game they ever made in the United States or whatever, or North America, where I might just go pick up carts just so I can say that exact same thing. Like I'm gonna be like, I have every game they ever did.
And you've never like considered, I guess your horror collecting is you having a goal that's not tied to sets, but I talk to all these like set guys guys like us, and like I'll talk to like an NES guy who collects fucking nothing but NES, and they'll have like conversations like, yeah, I wish I could pivot into Game Boy, but NES is kind of endless, or yeah, I wish I could pick up all these nostalgic 90s PC games like I see you doing, but like I have to stick to my goals of NES, which again never ends. NES collectors, like, I'm sorry, but your hobby is too deep. You could do it forever, but you've never really, besides the hard games, just thought about pivoting away from sets.
No, like sets are hard, but it's also the thing I like when I tell people that I love like all the dumb minutia of video games, I mean that. Like all of it. I want to see all of it. I love seeing games I didn't own, didn't play. You know, it whatever it is, it scratches a very weird part of my brain where I'm just like, look at all this weird shit. Like you see me some of the like paths I go on where I'm showing you like a bunch of LCD games and stuff. I'm like, man, look at all this neat dumb stuff. I just like to see it. I love seeing it all. It's never been a money proposition for me. Like people think, oh, well, maybe you've been rich this whole time. No, man, I was broke as shit. Like I have like a decent job. My wife and I had dual income and no kids for a while. And that just recently changed, a couple of years ago. But like a lot of it, I hustled my ass off to get games. I sold games. I bought games. I did other things. I did, I would have 2 jobs, but it wasn't like, I grew up poor, wasn't making huge money or anything, still not making huge money. I'm doing fine, but it wasn't always the case. And, I've been collecting since 2004, and definitely in 2004, I was not like crushing it. I was like fresh out of college. I didn't have a job. I got a job and then got like laid off and didn't have a job for like 9 months during this period while I was still collecting until I got a little more stable, changed my skill set, to make myself a lot more hireable, like, because I didn't want to take jobs in the fields that were offering to me. Like that wasn't the goal, in life. So like when you're pivoting, it's hard. The interest is games, right? And that's, people don't see like all the other weird work that's gone into it. But when I tell people I love to make lists, I love seeing the game stuff, there's no reason for me to pivot. And I've also come to peace, even though there's this sickness in my brain that says complete all the boxes, I'm also fine if I don't. That's it. Like you had to come to a place with that. And I only feel that way because I completed the sets that matter. And that's really the Super Nintendo set is really the only one that matters. It's the like push comes to shove, put a knife to my throat, only save one. It's Super Nintendo and it's done. And so I can be at peace with the rest.
All right. I know we're going to Portland soon. Is Eric going to be at Portland? I don't know. I know he's a little bit disenfranchised by how stupid collectibles have been in the past few years. But he is a comic dealer, so.
Yeah, I don't think he's coming this year. I think he's got obligations otherwise. But I don't think it's a lack of like he wouldn't come. I think he's just otherwise obligated.
I just need to talk to him and be like, you got to talk to Johnny. He won't stop the sets. Because if anyone doesn't know, Eric is a comic dealer and collector who's like, and comic people are super into like keys and mint condition and things like that. So Eric thinks like sets are just the dumbest shit. Like, why are you collecting a set of 85% games that are just complete garbage? What are you doing? Which, yes, it's crazy, but he understands it's crazy. And, Eric talking to me, even though he didn't change my opinion then, I still feel guilty when Eric is like looking at me like, Tyler, what are you doing? Stop buying this garbage. He's living in my brain. Like he's my little, the devil on my shoulder. That's like, Tyler, don't buy this. This is a stupid thing you're doing. Stop buying sets.
Okay. So I think we're pretty much done with the episode, but I want to answer a question from the Discord. Not from our specific Ask the Podcast one, but because it's very relevant to what you just said. I was asked this specifically. As by Reno the Collector, he says, why are you still a set collector when you clearly think being a curated collector is the better way to collect? Why not just sell the shovelware in your collection and keep the bangers? Here's a couple of reasons. One, because I like the sets, and I am lucky enough right now financially, I don't need the money. I don't have to sell. There's no impetus to sell except like gaining back space and like, other things in my life. Yes, 100%. This is more a do as I say, not as I do kind of a thing, because I understand the unique sickness that is in my brain, right? I understand where I'm wrong and where I'm inconsistent. And I try to make sure other people don't fall in the same holes I've fallen into. So that's why I'm not a curated collector and why I preach so avidly. Like, yeah, it's not that like this is not the best for value, especially because people are very concerned about the value, especially with games being the prices they are right now. I am not. I did not do this for the money. I did not do this for the value, even though I buy based on value propositions. That's just like, oh, this is a good deal. And if I ever had to, it would be fine. But my brain doesn't really consider that. Like, my brain is like, I just want to own these. It's not like this is a good deal. So I try to tell other people who are going to be less like me, do this, because if you ever decide you actually need to get out of it, and this is the shovelware portion, no one's buying the shovelware. No one wants this. It won't sell. It'll be sitting there until a weirdo like me comes in and makes you an offer on it. So only have good stuff. So if you decide you want to do something else, and if you're in the hobby long enough, like, hey, Stefan, Tyler, as we've talked, you may decide you want to do other things. And that's fine. Yep. That's not you copying out. That's not you betraying the hobby or any of this other weird shit that people want to. You're allowed to change your mind and you're allowed to go do other things. So I try to make it so people who are more likely to change their mind than me have the best ability to do so.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You and I have talked numerous times about opportunities where you were thinking about moving for various reasons. Do you think that were you to move, would you then consider trimming down? Because that shit, like anytime I think about moving, for me, even just the stuff that I still have, it's just like, I never want to have to move any of this ever.
So yeah, like still considering moving in the not so distant future, couple years or whatever. Does that give me a panic attack while thinking about it? A little bit? But I've also been taking steps with the type of boxes I buy, knowing what games fit in what type of tubs, specifically in single layers. So no, I'm not thinking about trimming. And people say, well, you just said you're like keeping, you love all this stuff, but you also say you would sell it. Yeah, if the right offer came around, yeah, I would, because it is just stuff. If someone said like, hey, let me give you $2 million for your stuff right now, would you take it? It's like, yeah, why? Because I love my family. I could just be like, here, we now have $2 million and I still am making money and then can go buy other games later.
Yeah, you can always do it again.
Right.
Like, honestly, like as a something to do, I have recently just been thinking about putting a card-only NES set back together, because that's one of the sets that I sold.
I was going to say you would I imagine one day you'll get a nostalgia bug and you'll pick up some more games.
Yeah, but that was as just because even I already have a Super Famicom. I do still actively collect. I never stopped collecting, but that is exclusively something that I do to give me something to do at conventions, because generally the things that I am actively looking for are not things that appear at conventions. So and I want conventions to be more than just me hanging out with my friends, which I love, don't get me wrong, but I also want to be there for to have something to look for. And so Super Famicom is that thing for me. But then I was thinking about adding NES to that list and just slowly picking up the set, because I never did get rid of my stadium events.
Yeah,
so that's
you got the hardest part.
That's literally half the set.
Yeah. Yeah. Value-wise, you've done it. You're halfway there.
Yeah.
So, there's my very long-winded answer to, I did not change my mind. I've just evolved. I made all of my decisions suit the larger purpose later down the line. Does that make sense? Is that clear enough? I know I ramble. So, all right. We did it, guys. We talked about what our goals. Did we talk enough about what we're doing in the future? I'm doing the same thing. That's keep
me
keep
too.
doing this.
I don't know. I guess I'm doing the same thing.
You talked about what your
I'm a
pivot
pivoty
was.
person. I could see myself pivoting if things get really bad for some reason and the games I'm after are hundreds and thousands of dollars. I'm all about finding the most interesting thing that is hard to find but cheap and still fun to collect. So.
Yeah.
Not that I'm specifically collecting cheap things. I'm buying a lot of dumb expensive games that no one cares about, but I don't want to be in the most competitive markets. That's not fun to me because it's too crazy. It's more fun finding something that no one cares about.
Let's complete our Scott Adams text adventure set. Come on, me and you, Tyler.
Those are some pretty popular games.
They are. They're cool. I'm in. Let's do it.
Johnny, that sounds like
you,
something that you might have been buying, but should we do a collector's question? Not a collector's question. Ask the podcast. People from the Discord are asking us questions.
It is
Johnny,
a collector's
that part of the
question.
Show?
Yeah, it's a collector's question. It's a collector's question.
So we have a separate channel for collector's questions because we needed a channel for people to ask questions, not to be on the show, just like, hey, help me with this collecting thing.
Yeah.
So it's called Ask the Podcast. Anyway, Kanakis asks, how much time does it take to be a podcaster? How much time do you spend preparing? How long is the uncut session, including setup? How long does it take to do all the work after? And how does it compare to being a YouTuber? I mean, all right, I'll say,
Tyler, you're the best one.
I do the
Yeah, you
most
should
work on
start,
the
and
show.
then we can bolt it back. We can bolt onto it. Yeah.
I mean, for the other guys, they show up for 4 hours a week, or 4 hours every other week, and they're good. So I'd say usually like maybe an hour before the show, we spend preparing. A lot of the topics we know pretty well, so we could just kind of get a general outline, get some notes together, and do some things. I would say there's few topics that really we spend a lot of time preparing for. The most recent one I can remember, the history of limited editions. I was doing like weeks of on and off research trying to find the earliest limited editions, and I am still finding things that like we could have brought up on the show. I know like we brought up one or two of those Origin pre-order things from around 1990, like Ultima 6 we brought up, but there might be an Ultima 5, and I found out there was a Wing Commander that you could also pre-order, and we didn't bring that up on the show. So anyway, sometimes we do a lot of preparation, sometimes we don't. But you know,
so you want to collect? So does anyone want to collect R-Zone? I did an inordinate amount of research for an hour-long topic.
Basically, the dumber the show is, the less anyone cares about it, the more work we've probably put into preparing for the show.
Probably.
Meanwhile, we do an NES episode, and we're like, let's just talk about Nintendo for 45 minutes. We probably got NES covered, right, guys? Yeah, we don't need to prep at all.
I mean, we did prep pretty hard for that Odyssey 2 episode.
Oh my God. No one listened to that, so no one even knows what you're talking about.
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, so like 4 hours to prepare, because we're doing like a 3-hour show, and then like sometimes we talk after dark for an hour or two. But then how much does it take after? I would say like however long the podcast is, double it, and that's probably how long it takes to edit and really get everything out. And you know, I listen at like 1.6 speed when I'm editing, but then I've got to like check for new Patreons. I've got to do the outro where I do the errata and shout out all the Patrons. I've got to do the thing that fixes all the levels and makes the podcast sound good and removes the background noise. That takes a little bit of time. Actually posting it takes a little bit of time. And like I've cut things out. Like I used to make an Instagram post for every show, and I used to do intros, which I just recently cut out just because like things take a lot of time with podcasts, especially because we do have to do it on like a regular schedule. But comparing it to YouTube, it's like not even comparable. YouTube videos take so long for like a decent scripted YouTube video, because every second is not only scripted, like the whole point of a podcast is that it's generally conversational, unscripted, and it sounds better like that. At least that's how we have a style of our podcast. Yeah. But like I script every line of every YouTube video I do, and then every second of everything you say needs some visual aid on the screen. So, I mean, I'm not even a good YouTuber. I just go to Google Images and I like scale and crop images and throw them around the screen. But yeah, YouTube takes a very, very long time. That's why I don't make a lot of YouTube videos, because Collector's Quest takes up all my time for that kind of hobby thing.
Yeah, even the stuff that I've done, which for the Art of Nintendo Power stuff, which is mostly me talking at the camera, it's still an enormous amount of time.
Yeah. I can't imagine being a YouTuber and having like another creative hobby on top of that, just because being a YouTuber would take up all your time.
This is also a good time to remind the audience that we have tried multiple times to get Tyler to not do all of this work. We've tried multiple times to hire someone to do it, and he will not allow it.
Nope, it's not happening. Right. Kanakis also asks, "What?
Hold on. I want
stuff to say."
Yeah, I got some other stuff, because there's a part of the podcast that people don't even see and that we don't even talk about. Tyler and I and Stefan, like, we also have long-running continual conversations that are happening that affect what is on and what the podcast is about, like asking questions, like me at my computer. So it's like, this is all the work you see, but there's also, when I'm mining ideas, the podcast consumes a large amount of my brain, okay? Because I care about the podcast a lot. So I'm thinking a lot about things you aren't even considering, and like I'm talking to Tyler constantly. And it's not like that's not work or anything. I enjoy talking to Tyler. I enjoy talking to Stefan. and I enjoy looking this stuff up. But if we're talking about the consumption of your life, it's a lot. It's a lot. And then also, if you're like, also, I want to go look and hunt for games and stuff, it's my full-time hobby. My full-time hobby is the podcast now, and my secondary hobby is games, and then all these other stupid hobbies I have. And then, like, if you talk about the other part of the podcast that you don't is when we interact with people on the Discord and everything else, so things that are part of the podcast and, like, just friends we have that, like, listen to the podcast or have some thoughts, the engagement, and this is not a complaint, but it's a lot. It's a lot of time. These are hidden time sinks that you won't think about. And it's not like I have a bunch of friends that, just listen to the podcast, are just like good friends now that I'm chatting with every day. And some of it comes from the podcast or it's just about games. My hobby is this one big podcast thing all rolled up into one. And the amount of time that takes is like every moment I'm not working or being with my family is the time it takes. And that's not a complaint because I like it. Again, obviously there's not so much money coming into this podcast that I'm like, it's because of the money. No, I don't we do this for the love. So, if you are thinking about starting a podcast, don't let me dissuade you. But along with all the nuts and bolts work Tyler said, that's all the ancillary stuff that comes with it. Like if you look at Tyler's, I'm constantly bugging Tyler for stuff. Just like, hey Tyler, what do you think about this? Tyler, what about this side? Tyler. And it's just like, God, shut up. Stop talking to me. I'm trying to sleep. We're a 3-hour difference where I am, Johnny. Or it's too early in the morning. I'm still asleep, Johnny. Stop talking at me. So, just things to consider.
There's a bonus question here that I skipped. It was, do you see any room for future efficiency gains? So I don't know how much we can do. I already cut out the intro, but we have made the podcast somewhat more produced. And I like the audio stuff is good. I mean, people want a better sounding podcast, but just things like the intro music and the intro and the outro, like, I don't think people actually care about that stuff. And if we literally just did a podcast from when we start recording to when we finished recording and literally just threw that through the audio thing and then threw it up, I think it would be 95% as good as what we have now. And it would take way less time to edit. And I think people would be fine with it. So if you do ever do a podcast, just do it as simple as possible. And don't try to make it this huge, big production. Because, man, editing sucks.
The intro, I like that you cut the intro because that was a good efficiency gain. I like that we just talk about what the title is in the beginning because you always double up anyways. Like you create this bumper
I know.
and then say the thing you're just going to say. Not worth it. The music is like fine, whatever. But I think you need it in the beginning to get people, used to it to the point where they're just like hitting skip. They're like, all right, hit the 30-second skip. I'm not interested in this bullshit. Let's get to the episode. So I think you need it at first, and then you can cut it off. But I think you need to start with it.
Also, I think since this person, it sounds like they're interested in starting a podcast, I would say that when it comes to like YouTube, I think people just say, oh yeah, just use whatever gear you can find to start making content. I would say probably for podcasting, just pick up a decent microphone. Like, I'm not saying like go out and like get crazy for your first time out, but like podcasting, since like the audio is the only way in which that person is like consuming your content. If you sound like shit, people will not want to listen to you.
Yep.
And so like, again, you don't have to, I'm not telling you to go out and buy $1,000 Rode mic, like, but just not the onboard webcam mic, just spend a couple $100 and you can use that for other stuff too. You'll use microphone for Zoom calls and shit too. So,
also, if your goal is reach, podcasting is not the way to do it. Probably,
sure isn't.
We have like a few thousand listeners, and I listen to a bunch of video game shows with like way less than that. And you go look at a YouTube video and it's like, oh, it's only got 60,000 views. Man, no one knows about this channel. So a lot less people listening to podcasts than just putting on YouTube videos.
Yep. And people ask us like, oh, are you going to can you put it on YouTube too? And it's like we could put the audio out there, but like doing video and like having someone like cut images and stuff would be so much extra work. And Tyler does not want to do that work.
If we didn't edit, it might be doable, but we do. So
Well, one, I don't want to do the work, and two, I don't want the negative comments on YouTube. That would make me feel bad. And then three, there are probably so
don't
many
we get
people
negative
like,
comments on other ways though?
I mean, we
know
could,
get
but who's
negative
going to go through
comments.
the effort of like signing up for a SoundCloud account to give us a negative comment?
I mean,
anyone who
no,
wants to call
they
us
go to
racist.
they go to iTunes and tell us.
Okay, they leave
we
us bad
suck.
reviews, sure.
There's a few good ones on. There's a few gems telling us how dumb we are.
But it's a lot easier to leave a negative comment on YouTube, and that demotivates me. I don't want to hear how terrible I am. Like I don't even like if I put like a lot of effort into a couple of my YouTube videos, and like I don't understand like who would thumbs down this. Even if you disagree, just click it off, man. I spent a long time on this. Come on. And it's like literally it'll be like one thumbs down, and it's like what the fuck, guy. Yeah.
I love
and then
the
also I'd feel bad
comments
because
on
like
Gemini.
we have so many people who listen to the podcast as a podcast that the YouTube video would get like 17 views, and then I'd feel like, oh, no one listens to us, we suck. So not gonna do YouTube.
I mean, also our episodes are like 3 hours long. Like, what would be feasible if we went like the CUP podcast, where we just like that was an interesting segment, cut it up into 10 minutes, and
Oh
put
my
it as
god,
a
no!
video.
Like they do that because it's like a YouTube business for them.
That-
Like
that's
we are
what I'm
so
saying.
not a business.
I know that's what, but I'm saying like in the YouTube world, putting up a 3-hour video where you don't actually see people's talking faces or something. No one watches that. No one wants to watch that. We would be algorithmed to death out of YouTube, so it would be pointless to do so.
You're right. All right, just because Kanakis kind of monopolized this section, I'm going to do one more question. Tom Nook asks, what are your 3 favorite ice cream flavors? Mine in no particular order are coffee, pistachio, Rocky Road. Tom Nook, excellent choices, I'm going to say.
Neapolitan would get the best of all 3. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. But just, Neapolitan is the ice cream of birthdays in my brain. Like, for some reason, we'd be at my grandma's house, and whatever birthday we were having there, Neapolitan ice cream always came out. So I do have like a weird nostalgia for it, especially Neapolitan ice cream sandwiches. Like, hey, you get little bites of goodness all over, even though it's so cold, it just all tastes like the same thing. There's not really unique flavor differences. For me, I really like Americone Dream. That's pretty good. That's a Ben and Jerry's. I'm also very fond of Moose Tracks. And then
The Americone Dream has the potato chips in it, right?
So, yeah, I think so. Yes, the waffle. It's got the waffle bits in it.
Okay.
Which
I just know it's like a little bit salty.
Yep. And yeah, you'll see with all my sweet, I like a little salty, and then I'm really fond of a salted caramel. That's me.
Stefan?
These are all Thrifty brand specifically, which I don't know. I don't even know if you have Rite Aid. Do you have Rite Aid back there in the backwoods, Tyler?
Yeah, we sure do.
Super
So-
nostalgia.
I don't know.
for
I actually don't know if
Thrifty's
there's a
ice
Rite
cream.
Aid near me, but
So Thrifty is the brand. Originally, Rite Aid, the establishment was called Thrifty. They got bought out. They became Rite Aid. They kept the Thrifty ice cream brand. So all of my favorite ice creams are Thrifty. And if I had to pick, Chocolate Malted Crunch would be far and away
It's a good
the
one.
best.
Solid pick.
Far and away the best.
Really good at Thrifty too.
Yeah. Distant second, probably Butter Pecan. And
Another
then-
solid choice.
And then Black Cherry is that was like my childhood pick. That's 100% nostalgia. It's not that great. I'm going to tell you right now.
Yeah,
Not that great.
Black cherry,
But,
not feeling it.
Yeah, but Black Cherry was my childhood favorite. So that gives me.
Can't be undersold, but the Rainbow Sherbet at Thrifty, solid,
Yeah,
so
excellent.
good.
Yeah.
That would be my top. That's actually my top.
All
Thrifty
of their
choice.
ice creams are
Yeah.
amazing. Like they're great.
That, and they have that special scooper, which you can now buy on Amazon.
Yes,
But
I have 2 of them.
I heard they don't work that well though.
You know what? It's they weren't made for small cartons. They were made for scooping out of giant fucking 5-gallon vats, right? So like once you get a few scoops in, because it cuts holes basically
Right. Yeah.
in cylinders
It's an
into
ice
your
cream
thing.
punch.
Yeah. So once you get a few of them out of the center of your small, half-gallon ice cream tub, then it gets annoying. But that first scoop, man, it's for the nostalgia. It's good. It's
Is
good
it
stuff.
okay? Because I was thinking about trying it. Because I have a lot of like Thrifty was the ice cream store that was like by the house that we could walk to and stuff.
Mhm.
So I have a lot of summer nostalgia for Thrifty.
It very similar to like the zapper gun click, that cha-ching cha-ching from that thing. It's I haven't been known to like be in the kitchen for some other non-ice cream related reason and seeing the scooper and just like clicked it a couple times just for that. Like,
Yeah, well, I mean, you know where you live. You know where the Rite Aid is right there by your house. That's my childhood Thrifties.
No.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, do they still have ice cream in that one? I haven't been there.
Oh, they
in a
sure
long
do.
time. Oh, nice. Yeah, right. You walk in the door. It's right there on the left. It's the same bar that's been there since the 70s.
Wait,
Yeah,
a
they
bar?
still
There's
had-
an ice cream bar at this Rite Aid?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize. I thought it was just like a frozen section at like a
No,
no,
pharmacy.
no,
I
there's
didn't
a-
realize
no,
it was
like-
an ice cream
like-
place.
No,
Yeah.
you have to be trained. Like you'd be a register person, and then they would like you get to the register, and you're like, I would also like ice cream.
Oh,
Or you go
I
stand in front of the
100% have
window.
never seen anything like that. That's kind
What
of
is
Oh yeah,
What is the lowest price you remember paying for a scoop, Johnny?
39 cents a scoop.
Yeah, because I remember something like I think it was 25 in South Pass.
Yeah, it
That's
was like 39, and then I remember like
Now it's a couple bucks, but
yeah, now like and once upon a time I remember because a scoop was like 60. It got to like 60 cents, but for $1 you could get 2 scoops, and you could choose either waffle cone or the regular Thrifty
oh, see,
cone.
I was never allowed. Like the waffle cone was like too rich for my parents' blood.
25 cents extra. or
Yeah,
whatever for
yeah.
that waffle cone.
No waffle cones for us. Cake cones only.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or a cup.
You know, like I think the waffle cone is definitely the better flavor choice,
Yeah.
but the nostalgia choice is the cake cone. Like
Yeah,
that's
no,
how
for
I
sure.
want it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I'll do the best of both. Well, not best of both worlds because this is a cup and a cake cone. But I'll get it in a cup and then just add the cake cone on top.
I'm sorry, what is a cake cone? Is that not like a regular ice cream cone? Is it soft?
It is.
No,
It-
it is. It's just that's what it's called.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's just like that yellowy kind of, where it's like a cylinder and then a smaller cylinder under it.
Yep. Okay, just making sure.
Yeah, rather than a waffle cone, which is, a cone.
So, let me preface my answer by saying the Fleo right under this question says, knowing Tyler, he'll say that he prefers gelato. And I don't understand how I'm profiled or like, what
What do you mean?
what vibe do I give
Continue.
off? I
What
don't
vibe
understand.
do you give off that you would that people assume you would pick the old person option?
What? Gelato's an old
what
person
vibe
option?
do you
I don't
give off?
understand.
I mean, gelato's just Italian ice cream.
It's a slightly different textured ice cream. Like, anyway,
Delicious.
I get Talenti gelato.
You sure do.
And my favorite flavors are mint and pistachio, the 2 green ones. And my favorite flavor of actual ice cream is cheesecake. Relatively new flavor I discovered. It tastes like cheesecake, and it's amazing. You should get
I
it.
find that more in frozen yogurt these days.
Not-
I don't.
not
It's all the same
strawberry.
to me. I don't care.
They like, well, no, like there's this bit, like the best thing about, if you ever watch The Good Place, is where they correctly identify that frozen yogurt is like hell's version of ice cream. You're just like, this is a very sad imitation that we've all talked ourselves into as being good, but really it's just sad.
The one thing that I like about frozen yogurt is the like the machines they use for it, where they have like the middle lever that'll let you
Yeah.
swirl two flavors together, and
Yeah.
that's what I was just thinking about because the frozen yogurt place over here, Johnny has strawberry as the alternate flavor for cheesecake, and it's amazing.
You know what I don't like is they have that there and they don't think enough about their flavor combinations when they put the things. You're like, you would never mix these two. Are you insane? Like put 2 mixable ones together.
Yeah.
It bothers me endlessly. Every time I walk in there, I'm like, I wouldn't could these 2 flavors would be mixed
It's like coffee and mint.
like it would just be like a natural mix. You're like, oh, chocolate and vanilla. Like you
Yeah.
that's like a common swirl. And they'd be like, here's chocolate and dog shit. Why I put those 2 together. Do you want to mix them? And you're like, no, what is happening? So anyways.
I will say, I don't know if this is something you would predicted of Tyler. For whatever reason, I'm being profiled here. I do put my ice cream in the microwave for a few seconds before eating it to soften it up. How you feel about
Nope.
that? Some good stuff.
Gross.
Don't like hard ice cream.
Nope. I just nah. I mean, I'm with you, but I just let it naturally thaw. I would not put it in
No
putting
way.
it in the microwave will change its textures.
Leave
Like-
it on the counter for
Yeah,
5
yeah,
minutes,
Yeah,
man.
yeah. Come on.
I'm
Yeah, like,
impatient. Let me eat.
No, I pull it
No,
out, put
and
it on
this
the
is coming
counter, and
from
then
the
I
guy
get the
like-
bowls.
I think I've talked about this before where I will just like canned food, I will just eat that shit out of the can because who has time to take it out of the can and put it in the microwave? Like canned raviolis, delicious. Just give me a
Gross.
fucking fork.
What?
So I am
What?
totally that guy. I am totally that guy, and yet I'm not putting fucking ice cream in the microwave. I will absolutely leave it on the counter.
All right. Let's get off this long ass ice cream topic. And what are you guys buying and playing?
All right. I'm playing still some Last of Us. Woo. And buying, Tyler, do you want to know what I'm buying besides text adventures? Do you want to know?
Is it stupid?
It's Wii games, yeah. I told you I bought
It
like
is-
40
it
Wii
is
games.
stupid.
Yeah.
Yes, it
Yeah.
is.
I bought some Halloween games too. I bought some Wii games. I won't talk about the other thing because it hasn't got here yet, so I'll save that for the next show. Let's go to the old eBay purchase history. Yes, The Count, Scott Adams, Atari. It's not an Atari game, like I think it's a disc-based game, but yeah, text adventure. Woo! Those are the Tyler, it's coming today, so I'll say it. But that Hangman we talked about in the last episode,
Oh, you got it?
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
The grimmest fucking, I don't like, Creative Software presents Hangman, Hangmath, two home educational programs, where they've even, like, on the box, they failed to get Hangman right, because it says, like, the blank letter is an O, but the word is school. So they've already guessed O. So one O is there, so the other O should be present. I don't know why they got this so horribly wrong. But yeah, it's got an executioner dragging a dude to a noose, like an old like prison style noose. It is just a grim image for educational software for children, and it's for the Commodore VIC-20. So there you go.
Fantastic.
It's so fucking weird. It's this cassette-based game. Like that. I mean, that art. I hope everyone goes and looks at that art. You're just like, what is happening here? Why is anyone doing this? Anyways, that's what I bought. What about you, Stefan? Stefan hasn't gone in a long time. Like Stefan.
Yeah, I actually I have been on an Old Republic kick again. I don't know what inspired me necessarily. God, what did inspire me?
Was it
Why did
Star
I
Wars
log in?
Obi-Wan?
No. Strangely enough, although I did really enjoy Obi-Wan. But then I tend to like all Star Wars things except for Book of Boba Fett was a disaster. But yeah, I've been playing the Old Republic, going through the Sith agent storyline, which is probably the best storyline in that game. And then as far as purchasing, well, I bought. I've been I've been dabbling in like trying to build old Magic decks that I used to have when I was a kid out of like only revised cards. And I've been doing that strangely. I just finished off my blue deck, which I'm pretty happy with. It was not expensive. None of those cards are expensive. The ones that I'm using in my deck anyway.
I'm like, why wouldn't you
And,
come to me? I have so much bulk.
I don't know. It's just been a fun thing. I don't know. Maybe I'll look through. You got revised bulk? Because I'm only interested in revised.
I mean, depends what you mean. Like, has to have the revised frame, or like you want white border stuff. I have a bunch of white border stuff.
It's got to be revised, Johnny. Did you hear the man?
Yeah, no, the whiteboard stuff. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yes, I have a bunch of white border stuff.
Yeah, not unlimited. The before, like I think it was like technically like third, right? Third edition.
Wait, Stefan, are you building like your shitty childhood decks, or like the decks
Yes.
that were good when you were a kid?
No. My shitty childhood decks.
Okay.
Yeah, as close as I can to memory.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. I mean, I could memorize a lot of my deck list that I used in constructive play. So yeah.
Yeah. It's just like I don't even play. I like having them. Like I have my green deck that I put together, and it's just basically a stress toy. Like when I'm on Zoom calls and stuff, I shuffle it, and it makes me feel good. But yeah, so I bought some cards for that. Art wise, I picked up the I think the last major purchase that's going to be at the Game On Expo in Arizona in a couple weeks is the Dr. Mario clay cover. Or rather, the Dr. Mario figure from that cover for Nintendo Power.
How does this shit still exist? I just don't understand.
It's what I do, Tyler. Finding shit that doesn't exist.
It
is what I
shouldn't
do.
exist. I would have spring cleaned that out 3 years after it was made. Been like, oh, what the fuck is this thing still doing around?
Yeah, honestly, it's only like 3 inches tall, so that one actually makes more sense as to someone just like stashing it in a drawer. The Wily ship, when I found that was like, I don't understand. This is a very large thing. Why does this still exist? Or like the Track and Field 2 shoes, like why? But yeah, so I found that. A couple other pieces I have in the works right now that I don't want to talk about just yet. But things are in the works. That's really where I'm putting all my attention. I bought. I did buy one of the, not the full size Master Chiefs, but the half size Master Chief statues. I bought one of those recently because if you hadn't heard, as of the end of next week, I will be gainfully employed by Bungie. And so I decided I wanted to get some Bungie stuff for my office. So I got Master Chief, and then I also got... years ago, someone had posted on an art group, they had the prelims for the painted covers of Myth 1 and 2. And I was like, I wonder if that guy still has those. And sure enough, he does. So we struck a deal, and I am paying for those right now.
Day one at Bungie superfan coming and look at me with my prelims for the Myth games.
Exactly. I really was a big fan of Myth. It was my I did play quite a bit of Myth back in the day, and Marathon. But
all you computer gamers just fell off and became these console trash people. Well, I guess you're like an art person now, so you don't even count. But
yeah, you're all trash.
Yeah, he was wondering how he could get his nose higher in the air.
yeah.
Yes.
So he moved from computers to art.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, you're all trash to me. Correct.
All right.
All right. Is that it?
Yeah, I think that's it.
All right.
And Tyler, what did you do to yourself?
I've been playing just the other day Beneath Apple Manor, which is also one of the games I bought, which is why I'm playing it. I think it's pretty impressive. It's a 1978 game. I was playing the 1978 version. It was re-released a few times. It's the first roguelike game. It came out 2 years before Rogue, and it didn't inspire Rogue. I think they were developed, independently with similar ideas. But it's a game you explore a randomly generated dungeon with your guy, and you go and you fight monsters, and you have to dive deeper in the dungeon.
Horrifying apples.
What are you talking about? We're not talking about Apple Panic. Beneath Apple Manor. Apple games love making Apple puns with their magazine titles and their video games. But yeah, you basically just level up and keep going down deeper and deeper into the dungeon until you randomly open a chest with the golden apple and win the game. And there are a lot of these early games from the 70s where people are like, oh, it's the first RPG, it's the first platformer. If you go to like Space Panic, it's the first platformer and you can't jump. So it's like, is it really the first platformer? But playing Beneath Apple Manor, you open a chest, and one of the things it'll like have one of your stats. It'll have like this random effect, or it will erase your map. Like you're building your map as you're exploring each level of the dungeon, and one of the effects will be it erases your map. And it's such like a rogue thing to do, to just like bullshit make you lose the game kind of. The first time I played, I didn't make it out of the first room because I was just randomly overwhelmed with enemies and I couldn't move. And it just felt like, man, this is the Rogue experience, and this is the first Rogue game they ever made. It was so cool how shitty the game was to you. So really, we need to change the word roguelike into Beneath Apple Manor-like, is what I'm saying. Also, you can make one move every about 3 seconds, not on purpose, just because the game was written in BASIC and runs so slow, so it is absolutely agonizing to play this game. I thought I was going to play it for like 45 minutes and like kind of get the idea of what's happening, and I was playing for hours just because the game runs so slowly. So maybe get an emulator, and if there's a way to like crank the speed of that Apple CPU up. Anyway, I bought Beneath Apple Manor, but I bought the placeholder one. So the game came out in 1978, and it was released in like this plain-looking folio edition, and it is absolutely rare and impossible to find as hell. So I got the 1982 re-release of it, which doesn't just have blocks for graphics; it has actual graphics. So it's definitely not the cool one to own. But I'm for some of these rare games, I want so many of them that I'm gonna have to deal with some placeholders here. I got Super Bomberman 5, the gold cartridge for Super Famicom. This was just a version of Super Bomberman 5 that was sold through CoroCoro Comic. Technically a different game from Super Bomberman 5. All right, does it count? In this version of the game, there are 3 battle maps that are unlocked for you from the start when you put it in, and you have to unlock them yourself in the original game. Does it count? Gold Super Bomberman 5?
It counts.
It counts, sure.
I'll allow it.
You'll allow it. And I got Tower of Druaga for the MSX.
Hey!
What? Why is that an A?
I like that game.
You like Tower of Druaga?
I like that game a lot. I do, yeah.
Oh, all right. Yeah, I'm collecting Tower of Druaga ports. When I was started looking into like this would be because I want the history of RPGs is what I'm collecting Tower Druaga for. I don't know, it's not really an RPG, it's an arcade game, but it's clearly something the RPG genre is built upon in Japan. For some reason, when I first was looking for Tower Druaga, I thought the MSX was the first home port, and it's not true at all. It's the Famicom version, I think, is the first home port. But that's not interesting at all because it's like super common. That's like a $10 game complete in box. But I got in my mind that this was the first home version, and there's one sitting on Yahoo Japan for like $200, and I'm not spending $200 for this stupid cassette game. This was the first one in like 2 years that came up with a no reserve auction, so I got it for like $45. So felt good about that. And those are the main things in mine.
You did it.
Woo! Everyone cares about those games.
I care about.
I got a woo for Tower Druaga, so you know what?
You did.
That's better than I normally do on the show.
Yeah, and you know what? I was giving you a double woo because for MSX, because I will also woo for MSX.
All right, cool.
Because there is still a small handful of games on the MSX that I would totally buy if they ever came up.
All right,
Which
tell
ones?
us what they are so we
Gradius
can buy them
2.
first.
Yeah,
No.
we have to cut you off at the knees.
No.
Okay. Well, I think we did it, guys. Where can we find you, Stefan?
Sure. Well, physically, if you want to hang out with me amongst
Valley.
all of my art. I mean, yeah. I mean, I guess you
house.
could come to my house. You could come to my house. That's just slide into my DMs. But
Slide into something.
yeah, slide. Yeah, that's right. Slide in my DMs so you can slide into something else. But so I will be at the Game On Expo in Phoenix, Arizona in August.
So smart for Arizona to host just game shows in the middle of the summer heat in Arizona, not like their winter.
Yeah. So that'll be. I think it's the first weekend of August. And there's going to be a bunch of stuff there that I've never shown before. I have a new exhibit for photo positives that I'm really excited about. I am going to have the Mario statue there. Well, I'm going to try to bring all of my clay sculptures. I have a new system in which to transport them that I'm excited to debut on this trip. So I'm going to go up there, and riding shotgun on my way up there is going to be Red the Game Shark.
Whoa!
So he's going to be volunteering for that event. And I need to print him a t-shirt now that I'm thinking about it. So we're going to be up there. And then also in September, there's a show called Megabit that is a Simi Valley local show. So I'll be
back?
Yeah. So I'll be there again this year in September. And that's like literally, it's like a mile away. So it's really easy for me to do. And then also later in October, I will be returning to the Portland Retro Gaming Expo. That is the new hotness that just hit my calendar that I got clearance on to actually go do. So that one I generally co-host with the Video Game History Foundation. Frank and Kelsey are going to be helping out there. And I think they're doing their own thing too. But yeah, so that's going to be a co-show with the Video Game History Foundation. And then those other 2 shows earlier this year, and that's the way to hang out with me physically this year. And then otherwise, find me on Twitter mostly. It's at Art of NP, but if you basically just Google Art of Nintendo Power, you'll find me everywhere. But that's at Art of NP on Twitter, and Art of Nintendo Power with underscores in it on Instagram, and then Art of Nintendo Power on YouTube.
Yeah. All right, Tyler.
I'm Default Gen. Get me on the Video Game Sage Instagram, or friend me on Discord. A lot of people are talking to me on Discord now. I guess it's the cool new way to talk to people, just like private messages on Discord. I'll also be at Portland Retro Gaming Expo. Johnny, we were just talking about flights yesterday, and you told me to put in a tracker because the flight was like $600. And I got an update, and now the flight is like $700.
Yeah, because now it's a Saturday.
Oh, okay. It's a Saturday now. Okay, yeah. Anyway, flights are crazy right now. If anyone doesn't know, like, if I didn't love you guys, I would just be like, no, I'm not going to Portland. I'm not going to spend like $1,500 just on a vacation to a game expo. But I don't know. I'm trying to either make my trip longer. I'm trying to figure out a way to basically reduce
You
the
have
price.
absolutely spent more money on stupider things.
Yeah, I know. I mean, like the most memorable times in life are like hanging out with friends in real life. So I have to make the trip. I'm just gonna try to find ways to like make the dates different to get that flight cost
those
down.
times where you fly out to hang out with us and then go hang out with your other friends.
Yeah, I could go hang out with my college roommates instead of you guys.
Yeah.
That was awesome too.
Yeah.
That was like an
it was.
Oktoberfest celebration unlike anything I'd ever seen. His whole extended family was there, and they were all acting like maniacs. It was awesome. I hope he doesn't listen to the show and hear that comment, but it was
Stefan,
so serious.
I'm trying to get him to come out here before he goes to Portland.
Oh, cool. That'd be cool.
And then I'm going to fly out of Santa Barbara. I'm assuming you're taking a truck.
I am taking a truck.
Cool. Can I put a box in your truck?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Question mark.
Yeah, I probably don't actually have a box that you have to take. But hey, speaking of the Portland Retro Gaming Expo, Collector's Quest will have a booth. Woo!
What? Woo!
Yep, we have a booth. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we have a booth, and we're sharing it with Mr. CIB, who will have, he's got a ton of good stuff for sale, so you're definitely going to want to check out that. And we'll have probably some buttons and stuff out that you can come and help yourself to, and, you know, one of the hosts will be there, probably me, because Tyler hates that. So I'll probably be
100%.
sitting there. Yeah.
Like Pat the NES Punk is like a celebrity among like retro game people, and he was just like sitting at Portland. Like I'm sure he sold an occasional book or two, but he's just like sitting there lonely. Like sometimes someone comes up and talk to him, and we are like nothing the retro game scene. So who would ever want to talk to us? Like, to be clear, this is a booth where we are going to be, or you and like Mr. CIB and some other people are going to be like selling stuff. But is also like 50% there because it's a convenient place for us to put our bags down in the middle of the show floor.
Yep. And that's going to be the other thing. Like, space permitting, like if you got a bag or something and you are a patron, you will be allowed to come and drop what you can. Like I said, for patrons only, and space permitting, like as much as we can. If you need to like drop something during the show, like a backpack or something, we're gonna try and accommodate that for you.
No bombs, please.
Thanks.
Johnny, I have to say something before we move on, because you mentioned the word CIB, and it has finally happened after many years. I was in conversation with a coworker, and they said CIB, pronouncing it as a word. They
Kib?
said SIB. They said SIB.
Oh, is it Sib?
Save those syllables.
And it took me a hot minute to figure out what the fuck they were talking about.
Did you then beat them with like a length of rope?
No,
With a knot
I
at the
laughed.
end?
I could not hold it in. I did laugh reasonably hard on a Zoom call.
You're just like, oh God, no, that's not a thing. Stop it.
Yeah, he said SIB, and I was like, I'm sorry, what?
You know, it means complete in the box.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how the conversation went. He was like, complete in box. Sib. Come on.
All right. Well, let's get us out of here. Guys, if you want to find me, you can find me mainly on our Discord, which you can get to by joining our Patreon. That's patreon.com/collectorsquest for as little as $2 or as much as $6, but $4 is the sweet spot where you get the extra content. So anyways, if you want to find me, you can do that, or you could just message me on Discord. I'm Johnny_Iucci on Instagram, and just same thing on the Discord if you need to find me. That's it for the show. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks for allowing us to get to 200 episodes. I can't believe we've done this 200 times. It's actually more than 200 times with all the other little stuff we've done.
You've done this 200 times.
And all the bonus content. True, but I can't believe anyone has enabled me to keep talking to them about video games, because this is madness and I didn't have anyone to talk to about it. So I was like, I guess I'll talk to the internet. Maybe they'll listen. And like, I didn't feel like I could join in on forums because too much had already been said. So I didn't feel good jumping into a middle of a conversation. I'm like, I'll just do a podcast. And now people listen to us? That's insane. You guys are crazy.
I'll walk away and talk to myself in the corner.
Yeah, I'll be over here with my microphone. See how you like that? Anyways, that's it for the show. Thanks so much. Bye.
That is our show. I've got nothing. You think people would notice if I just cut these last 5 minutes off the show? I would probably get the shows out 2 days earlier because I'd stop procrastinating it. Thank you to 8bit, apebit.bandcamp.com. Like the monkey, he does our intro music. And thank you to the patrons, registered patron number 1, Bowden, Canadian variant alert, Chris Glidden, Nintendo World Champion, Daniel Jacksvik, high-end collector, Andrew Brim, greetings stranger, I'm not surprised to see Andrew Shelton around here. 50 Hertz is good enough for me, Andre. Video games were meant to be Slab, Brandon Ackley, Brian Gupta, Ed Pocky and Rocky with Becky, the strictly limited super rare Bruno, coin operated Cameron Couch, Fat Cat Collector, Chris Jackson, Chris SNK, too many NES every time. Too many NES accessories, Morozek, Johnny's GBA hookup, Coffee with Mr. Saturn, Playing with Power, Connor Strange, The Last Game You Need for the Set, Corey O'Brien, Unpunched Hang Tab, Dustin Beagle, he has returned to judge this city, Eric Addison, Man of Nintendo in the World of Nintendo, Funky Brewster, What Do You Buy in GBO Metric, another vinyl collector, Grizzly X Bear, the actual Shinobi, Jasonic the Kid, Red Pyramid Thing, Jonathan Shados, Joseph Garris, he's just out here having a good time achieving his goals. Proud of you. The Nintendo Tape Archivist, Joseph Leo. Joe, you're talking to me about if you want to be like full-time 8-bit Nintendo guy, full NES set, all the international stuff, all the Famicom stuff, go for it. Go for it. Someone's got to do it, and it's going to be you, and we all know it's going to be you. Lance, Lord Hardstyle Z, The Degenerate, Matt Fall, Mint Condition, Mora Bros, Mr. CIB, get your loose Genesis carts out of here, Nicholas, Mad Dog McCree DiMaggio, Funkoland Employee, Platform Agnostic, Read the Game Shark, the Famicom Box, Retro Game Enthusiast, they call him that on the LJN podcast as well. They could be Ghosts and Goblins twice, Jeffish, Sean, the Gamer Collective, the New Craft who could beat Mega Man without the pause trick, previously unknown variant, Tim Walker, from the internet, Todd Fisher, Can't Put Limits on Collecting, VG Collectaholic, The Millennium, Will Joe, Keeper of the Zelda variant, 0x Def Code, previous game collector, Adam Kavanaugh. Someone was in the room with me and they just left because I'm shouting. Getting the full PS2 set because Steppenwolf, all caps, no gods or kings, only Andy Lancaster. What a 9.8, A++ Benji, the actually rare Bird Dog Gaming. Another YouTube video about stupid rare stuff that's not rare. I love it. Dropping the Mario 64 Penguin off the map, Brandon Chalker, Brandon Rogers, whose favorite episode is the wrestling episode, Christopher Piper, still shaking from what he found at Goodwill, still finding deals in 2022, Colton Murphy, a winner is him, David Green, Derek Lauer, who made me edit this show, Don Libby, the hero of time, Double Ugly presents Double Ugly, the official game of the movie, actually understands the Zelda timeline, Jeff Pierce, Jeff the Game Boy Farris, he is Error, Jeff Russell, Jeremy Jarvis, here for the Pog Talk, Joe actually plays his games champ. Pity, video game art collector because video games are art. Justin Chachio, Strands type game. Chris Shipley, lateral movement, who's got a Donkey Kong kill screen coming up. What a horrible night to have living in bits. Michael posting in the Discord right now. Chiaramonte, Nancy Hollenbach, Pro Skater, Nick the Video Game Database Morgan, Homebrew Mastermind Vertov, Off the Map NZ Collector, the other guy who collects Korean releases, Peaceful Games. He told me the other day he's never heard of Divinity Original Sin 2. I literally think it's the best RPG that has ever been made ever in the history of computer RPGs. He's never even heard of it. It's not even a computer game, it's ported to everything. Oh man, dude, come on. It's so good. I don't know. If you like JRPGs, maybe it's not for you. But if you like Western RPGs, oh my god. Dungeon Master Reed Stubenik, the promoter, Retro RPG Podcast, Tex, who collects for Jaguar, Tom Obscure Variant Chaser Chase, Zaventorian, he knows all 97 Nintendo games, 32 bits or less, do the math! And Andrew, actually collecting N-Gage O, Ben Parker, a bad enough dude to rescue the president, Chesno, all your base are belong to him, Colby, he is Sinistar, Corhagen does what Nintendo don't, Daniel McArdle, who thought this was the Retronauts Patreon, the Modern Database, Danny Gomez, the Philatelist, Dork Overlord, my childhood PlayStation idol, Game-Rave.com, he is 8-Bit, John Brown, like I am? I don't know. Joseph Rogers got 50,000 on Double Dragon, collector of everything, including Atari, Kalen McAteer, video game console modding guy, MP3, Sam, Sega Mark III Marks, Sean, the video game Illuminati LaCroix, and Hedgemon of the Geek Empire, and guy who listens to the LJM podcast, Valdor the Great. Thank you guys so much.